Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Alien versus Predator Galaxy podcast, the original Alien and Predator podcast. This regular host, Aaron Percival, aka Corporal Hicks, and joining me, as always, are my fellow scavengers.
Adam Zeller, aka RidgeTop.
Eric Adams, aka Xenomorphine.
Greg, also known as Still Collating.
And this is episode 189 of what is no doubt going to be many devoted to this brand new thing that's just come out that we've all just spent a bunch of money seeing over the weekend.
A bunch of money on popcorn buckets.
Fucking hell, yeah. And actually, go on, Adam, how much? Overall,
too much
on these collectibles.
I mean, between the Facehugger popcorn bucket from AMC, the alien head and canister from Regal, the other alien head, the Covenant head from Cinemark,
The cups?
and the cups. I'm not even going to think about it. My wallet hurts, though, so we'll just say that.
So when I'm sat here going, oh, I'm just a poor boy from a poor family, Adam's over here spending his fucking life savings on popcorn buckets.
Also, a clue for anyone out there who says, "Oh, we're paid by Disney, we're shills." Clearly not. We spend our own money on things.
To be fair, I'm expecting Eric to be demonstrating the lack of shillness in
Okay.
in some aspects of this podcast.
Anything.
No, we just
Getting a
there was a certain part that happened, and I went, "Oh shit, Eric's gonna fucking hate this." And you know which bit,
Right.
but we'll talk about it later.
I was there in spirit.
I'm curious to see exactly how you feel about that. We're avoiding spoilers for the first part of this episode, by the way, until we do our brief, dirty summary like we like to do. After which point we will be going spoilerific. So if folk are listening who just will want to hear our, impressions that are less specific, more impressionist, we'll cater to you there. And we are broadcasting this live to our Patreon supporters. We have a bunch of them here in the chat with us to talk Covenant. You know what? I keep doing that.
You get to see all our screw-ups like that. So.
I keep saying and typing Covenant when I'm meaning Romulus. I know. It's just because I haven't had the opportunity to obsess over the promotion of this as much as I did over Covenant's promotion. So whenever I'm in my head, I think 2017 was like last week. So whenever I'm typing stuff out, I'm like, oh, the new film, Alien Covenant. It don't work
from Covenant.
To be fair, I enjoy Covenant. Apart from the alien bit, which Adam always likes to fucking laugh at. But look, he's sat there laughing at it right now. He just rolled his eyes, audio listeners. But that's a whole other thing. Yes, we are talking Alien Romulus today after... When was it announced? Was it 2-3 years ago?
March 2022.
March 2022.
We were all surprised by it.
So a good 2 and a bit years. And it's only really just gone into overdrive this last month, 2 months, really?
Months.
Yeah, we got the first teaser trailer, I believe it was end of March this year, and then a theatrical trailer a few months later. But on the lead up to this movie, the marketing has just been insane. Like nothing we've ever seen with this franchise.
But I think a lot of that's due to the way they market movies these days as well. Everybody's got short attention spans, so it's the weeks up to the movie where they just go, slam, in your face. And I'd love to hear what Fede thinks about about that last push of marketing. And you know what? I'm going to add it to my list of questions for when we get him on the show, actually, just to make sure I don't forget. But before I start doing that and distracting myself, I am going to pass this off to somebody else to start talking those initial impressions. So who are we going to do? Adam, you can start.
Oh boy. So initial impressions, I got to see this with a bunch of friends on an IMAX screen Thursday night. We all had a really good time. A lot of Alien fans among my friends, and yeah, it was good. Like we all really enjoyed it. The audience seemed to like it in the theater. Um, it was just wild, like seeing a movie after years of hype. It's always this experience for us. Like when we hear something announced, and then that night we finally get to see it, you're kind of like psyched out, like, oh my gosh, we're finally watching this movie. Um, it wasn't without fault for me. I definitely had my issues, which we'll get into. Some of those have been mentioned on reviews. The movie relies on a lot of callbacks. I've heard it described as the Force Awakens of alien films, and I'm like, ugh, I don't like that. But overall, the movie does so much right. The cinematography, the score, the acting, the characters, just the dark atmosphere and vibe, the return to an emphasis on practical effects with the xenomorphs. There's more to like here than dislike, in my opinion. I don't know if I quite walked away from it like I did Prey, like wanting to sing its praises, like, oh man, this is just amazing. But it was at least good. I liked it. I enjoyed it. I'll be seeing it a few times. I'm happy to hear it's doing as well as it is. It seems to have pretty solid critical and audience reception. So I'm happy to hear that. Um, yeah, and this, like, I'll take that. After my love-hate relationship with Prometheus and Covenant, it has been so long since I've walked out of an Alien movie feeling like, wow, that was like just really cool. Other than like, what did that all mean? I need to see it again. But yeah, I mean, there were a few things that brought it down for me, and we'll get into that. But overall, I'd say pretty solid, pretty damn good. I quite enjoyed it.
How about yourself, Greg?
Well, I've also seen it on IMAX Thursday night with some of my friends and family. That's also what I wanted to comment on, that the marketing has been so prevalent that people have come up to me and told me, "Oh, do you know that this movie is coming out? I heard about it and I want to see it." And that's something that I haven't really seen for Covenant or uh, other films before. So I was pretty happy about that. I used them as guinea pigs to see their reactions as people who are less into the franchise. That was interesting seeing. I'll comment on that later. But yeah, I've seen it on IMAX twice, Thursday night and a Saturday evening. Um, I had no popcorn buckets to take, and we were teasing Adam there a bit, but let's not lie. If we had things available that he did, we probably would have spent most of the money getting all those things. I know I sure would have. I was disappointed
Yeah.
that didn't get the chance, but expected it. I was happy that I was able to get the main movie poster with Eileen Wu's character being face sucked. I was happy about that. And also before the premiere, we had one of the live performances. Somebody with a good facehugger mask had it on them in the first row, and then somebody called attention to that, and this is something that we suspiciously did not notice, and we should have. A person with a big puffy jacket and long sleeves in crazy summer temperatures, of course, unzipped and had the chest burster going out there, and then died on the floor. And props to, I think they were just people who were with the organization there that had the plan to do that. It was really fun, and props to them that the props looked pretty nicely. The chest burster guy, he laid there for a good few minutes, 5 minutes, when the pre-roll ads were there. So I loved the dedication to see that even in places I wasn't expecting. The theater was relatively booked for the first night, which I'm really, really happy to see. That doesn't often happen. And yeah, we had no Aspen beer. We just had some free promotional drinks, which was also something generally not done unless only for the biggest premieres in this location. So I was happy about that. I'm somebody who's been really keeping tabs on the spoilers, so I knew a lot of things that were going to happen, just of course not the final execution. So it was kind of weird getting into a film knowing what will happen, but wondering about the details. honestly, first time I watched it, I did really like it. I also had a lot of little nitpicks and pet peeves, but the general the general impression was it was finally something different from the recent prequels, even though there's a lot of material from that still in there. But I was happy to see something more akin to the Alien quadrilogy movie set that we knew and grew up with, and that's what we fell in love with. So I was really, really happy to see that. We will talk about details more later, but generally, I enjoyed the first act and relatively the second act so much that the first time. Then later, with some of the details, I was contemplating. They were distracting, of course, the callbacks mostly, but some other things. But it did keep me thinking about the film, and I couldn't get it out of my mind, and that's why I felt like, yeah, I have to watch it again. And on my second viewing, I liked it a lot more. Um, it it kind of helped knowing what were where some nitpicks will come into play when the callbacks are coming in. It helped me kind of relax and not be shocked when some of those things that I noticed and annoyed me came to be. And trying to focus on the details helped me so much more. Just seeing how much love there was for the set design, the creature design, and I was really happy to see that. As somebody who's really obsessed with the world building of this universe, it really was something that I wouldn't have expected that a film would go into that much depth for it. So I was really grateful for that. My general opinion is I really, really, really like the film in spite of its numerous little nitpicks there. We'll get into the number ratings later, but I'm happy. I'm happy with it.
So sorry, I think I might have missed something there. You said,
Yeah.
so did you go to? Was there a special event showing that you went to?
It wasn't like pre-release, but it was the premiere night. It was a Thursday, and it was the first showing, so they had a
So
little special.
opening
It's
night
public,
at a
yeah. Opening
opening
night,
night at a nearby cinema.
yes,
Okay, that put their own thing on.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
With okay, right.
It was something that they customized, which is why I wasn't expecting that at all.
Okay, Eric, how about yourself? You've seen it most recently this morning? No,
Yesterday, last
yes,
night.
last night. Right at night, weren't it?
Yeah.
What did you think?
Well, I know Fede Alvarez, he was on Perfect Organisms podcast recently. He said the worst thing that can happen, and this is understandable from a creative person, is for the response to be apathy. He wants you to either love the film or hate its guts, but he wants one of the two. He wants an extreme reaction. I don't think he's going to get any apathy with this at all. He's probably not going to like my reaction because I don't love it, but I don't hate it. There are parts I really like, but there are also other parts I really dislike. There are some parts I would consider a little law breaking, even. Darkness, the guy responsible for AvP Galaxy, his review, I think he put it best, where he said it felt like a kind of fusion between Alien Resurrection and Prometheus, which I think theme-wise, I think that's how I'd feel. It's kind of got that kind of vibe for me. Standout performance was David Johnson as Andy. Him and a character we will get to called Rook. I really liked them. But there were definitely parts about it which I felt from this director we would be getting a different film. There were a number of parts where it felt like they were given all the ingredients to make an amazing cake, but then you got like a really kind of basic, just a chocolate pudding or something, which was okay, but they didn't, like, you thought, oh, they're going to go there. I didn't quite go there. They went in a kind of, okay, it's an alien film, but it's not what I was hoping we would get. Visuals are superb. There are moments, there's no getting around it, where you can tell some face huggers and even adult aliens are fake. You can tell. They're not, that's not general rule, but there are moments where you go, that's being pushed along. It's a little puppet. But for the most part, the visuals are superb. There's a scene which has already been released in the promotional stuff, which is the character of Kay. She's walking under, a little kind of metal corridor, and there are parts in that scene that feel ripped straight out of Brett's encounter, because the character looks up to the ceiling. You have the light glare, the water hits the glass. It feels, all that's missing are like chains clinking in the distance and a cat. But there's no getting around it. There are moments where you feel this scene is queued up to be dripping with tension. And this is the guy that made Don't Breathe. And after I've seen Don't Breathe, I thought he can give that tension. And there are moments, like, without spoiling it, you're going to expect an alien film. There's resin in it. There's, that kind of thing. And I thought, we're walking down here, great, but it never felt like a feeling of danger. It didn't feel like there's tension. Even an attack with face huggers, they're kind of batting it off with baseball bats, and it feels like they're devaluing the dread. There's never a feeling of dread in parts where there should be. So the set production is amazing. It feels like it's part of, like, it feels like an alien RPG scenario in live action. But where it's let down is the characterization. Most of these don't feel like characters we're going to be quoting in years to come, like Parker or Brett. And the writing in general, there are parts where, like, you saw the blue mist. It feels like it's just in it. It never gets explained. Was that in a deleted scene? We can't judge because we don't know. But that's why I feel overall I'm having to say Alien 3 is my third favorite film. The visuals of this push it above Alien 3, but there's no equivalent of some of the dramatic gravitas you get in some of the scenes between characters in Alien 3. We don't really have that here. And there are one or two scenes where, yeah, there are callbacks. I don't mind them for the most part, but there are one or two when I go, why did you do that? It was completely unnecessary. This would have been better without you doing that thing. And yeah, so there are those moments which drove me mad with frustration, but other little attention to detail things where they're not member berries. They're things you need in an alien film. And like, it starts out at a colony, not like Hadley's Hope. This is fully developed, and you feel this is human colonization in the alien verse. It feels like I'm smelling the rust, But there are other points where it's just the writing lets it down at key points where it has no right to be. It should have been better, but it wasn't. So I'm at that kind of, it's great at these points, not so much at these points. So it kind of like has to be that average. And yeah, I have to say overall better than average, but not what I was hoping for.
Okay. I have seen it 3 times now, and I say seen in a loose term, and I'll explain that shortly. So I went to the UK Gala premiere. This was the official UK premiere of the film. I caught a showing with Chevy and another buddy that we play Alien stuff with in person at IMAX on Friday night, on release night. And my missus and I went to see it in 4DX on Sunday midday. So I want to preface this by saying I do not want to sound ungrateful, because I love that we get the opportunity to attend the premieres. You know, I cannot imagine 10 years ago I would have thought it's possible that we are sat in a premiere of the film or walking down a red carpet or anything like that. You know, the fact that this little fucking fan site has attended every single premiere since Covenant came out. You know, I went to see Covenant at the UK premiere. Adam went to see The Predator at the Toronto premiere, and Master Chief. We don't really talk about Master Chief on the podcast because he's more of a board person, but the Master Chief went to the LA premiere of The Predator. Adam and
You
I
went to
both
see
saw.
Ridley Scott.
I did. I got to interview Ridley Scott at the press junket for Covenant. I forgot what it was called then. The
Was it
press junket.
Fassbender with him in that
Yeah.
one? Yeah.
It was Fassbender, it was Ridley, it was Catherine Waterston, Billy Crudup, Danny Danny McBride, and Demian Bashir. You know, I got to see all those guys. Adam went to the New York. Was it New York? New York Comic Con premiere
Yeah, San
of
Diego Comic-Con for
San
Prey.
Diego Prey. I went to the UK gala showing of Prey, and I got to go to the UK premiere of Covenant. And that's fucking awesome. I cannot believe that we get to do this shit. I had a fantastic experience getting in there, walking down the red carpet, photos with some of the bits and pieces outside. The Cineworld. It was at the Cineworld in Leicester Square, and they'd done it all up. You had all the stairs had stuff playing. There was posters everywhere. All the video screens were just alien. They had a photo op. With like the red sort of bannering and logos and stuff. There was also like a what's the right word? Not like a Photoshop kind of thing, but like Adam, help me out.
Like a photo booth where they'll like throw something on digitally after. I saw you
Yes,
were snarling at the alien there.
yes,
That was fun.
that's it. And there was cool stuff like that. We got in there. There was the Romulus beer from the UK people.
Did you get to try that? The Siren Sour?
I don't like cherry, so I didn't try it.
Oh, okay. I'm a big sour guy. I'm sure I would like
What did it taste like? Corporations and disappointment.
And then I sat down. Whoever designed a theater, so this was a big giant IMAX, you know, one of those giant fucking curved ones. Whoever thought that seats that close and that far to the left of the screen were appropriate and entertaining needs fucking firing, because I could not see much of anything.
I felt so bad for you, man, when you
When I
showed
said
me where you were seated. I was
it
like,
was
oof.
it was fucking horrendous. Like, I really genuinely struggled to focus on and see the film, and even some of the sound wasn't quite right where I was as well, because I'm not in the middle. I'm under a speaker somewhere. So I missed a lot of detail. I missed a lot of dialogue. I missed a lot of like the background bits and pieces of what was happening. There were things later on in the film that were obvious when I sat down and watched it from the middle of the theater that I just didn't. I couldn't tell. I couldn't see. So I came out of that. Casper, sorry, it was allocated seating. You show up, you collect your tickets from like the Disney booth, and you crack on. So I joked that it was Disney punishing us for sharing some of the spoilers and the leaks. It probably wasn't. It's me suffering my first name being AA and being so close to the start of the fucking alphabet. Or I also took the piss out of my missus a little bit, because she came to watch it with me. I didn't expect a +1. They offered me one on the day, and I was like, "Well, you're here with me anyway. Do you want to come and see it?" So yeah, who knows? But I came out of that film so mardy, because as well as the fact that I couldn't see what was happening, I was distracted by the fact I was pissed off that I'm at this fucking premiere and I can't see what's going off. So I was so mardy when I came out of that film. I was so sour. I'd missed lots of details. I didn't really comprehend everything that was going on. And this was the Wednesday. before general release. I already had tickets booked with Chris with Chevy, so it came to Friday. We went out. We went and had a meal. He owed me a meal, by the way, guys. We made a bet on Aliens Dark Descent when it was coming out. Chris was convinced that the person who voiced the Wayland Yutani character, I can't remember her name, the bad guy, he was convinced that she was voiced by Catherine Mulgrew from Star Trek Voyager. And I was like, you know what? I will take that bet and I'm going to bet you a meal. So he's, a year later he paid up. But I was trying to keep mum through a lot of the talk. I was like, I didn't want to tell him thoughts. I didn't want to spoil anything. And I was trying to go in with an open mind. I fucking love this film. I came out of that second showing absolutely fucking ecstatic. I've not been like, look, don't get me wrong. I was excited about the film going into it. I had a lot of expectations of it being good, expectations of it being enjoyable. And normally the hype train has been massive for this film. It's been massive, so there is high expectations. And I had such a damn good time. I haven't been this excited coming out of an alien thing in a cinema the entire time we've been doing this website. The last 20 years of my life have been 21 years, really. I guess 22. I forget when I started AvP World. But, it was so damn enjoyable. So that showing was packed. So I've been going to this particular cinema for 5-ish years, something like that. I've never seen this cinema so busy at all, and it was packed. The IMAX showing that I was in was, most seats were full. Not all, because who gets a full sellout these days? But enough that I was like really, really impressed. Then the 4D showing was about half full. But I don't like 4D films. So that was not an enjoyable experience. For those who aren't aware, it's like a motion control, other senses kind of thing to it. So the chairs bumping around when they're flying up through the drop ship, or at the end when everything's being sucked out into space, as we all want to do in an alien film. There's flashes of light, there's puffs of air as face huggers are jumping at you and stuff like that.
They splash you with water.
We had the water turned off, so I don't know if they actually had water bits on it. But there was like even I was surprised by it. But I liked this bit when they got into the hive. There was like a very unusual smell that started being emitted in the screen, which was cool. I enjoyed that bit.
That was who you were sitting next
Television?
to.
And it happened a few times. This smell, but I made the mistake of taking nachos in. Yeah, it was not a good act. I didn't spill it everywhere, but basically, whenever the chair started moving, I'm just there clamping onto my nachos on my lap, being like, "Okay, don't go everywhere. Don't go everywhere."
I've seen that as like a joke online because there's parts of the movie where it's just super quiet, like in space. And so I've seen videos where it's like space and you just hear a nacho crunch.
Yeah, it is funnily. It's part of the cinema experience, but it's also one of the negative parts of the cinema experience. Like in the trailers, I'm sat there fucking munching away, just trying to get it down me before the film starts. And then when the film starts, you kind of like just really trying to keep it quiet and not make a noise. But no, 4DX wasn't really my bag. I'm glad I did it just to see what it was like because it was on offer. But Jesus Christ, no, thank you. Anyway, sorry. Yes, so the film, fucking loved it. I have two big problems, which is the speed of the alien life cycle in it and the callbacks. Now, I feel like we are overblown. It pisses me off. It annoys me It genuinely annoys me. More so the last two major ones, really. The last two bits of dialogue. It's specifically dialogue reuse that really winds me up. But I think we're overblowing the best of, the greatest hits kind of vibe, because when you sit and think about each of those, the majority of those callbacks, Romulus has its own spin on it. And it's its own spin that helps it stand apart. So, like the Alien 3 moment, it's not just the Alien 3 moment. He's there keeping a pinned, ready for this facehugger that's coming up. And I got a grin out of that from an AvP 2010 point of view for a start, because that is one of the things I love about the game when you harvest the various scientists and colonists, and it was very reminiscent of that. But it's a spin on that iconic imagery. There's the sentry gun scene, there's an obvious homage to the sentry gun scene, but it has its own fucking fantastic spin on it, which is the 0G stuff. And to be fair, that wouldn't have been as obvious without Andy sitting there calling out the 40%, 20% stuff. That's the bit that makes it very, very obvious that it's the sentry gun bit. Otherwise, that's fairly different on its own. And I think the same can be said for a lot of the scenes that are obvious references, but it spins out and does its own thing with it. And that's why I think we're kind of overblowing this greatest hits kind of criticism of it, much in the same way I completely disagree that you can call Predators a remake of Predator. That is so factually incorrect. Vibes and repeated elements don't make it a repeat, and the amount of repeated bits in this does not amount to it being a greatest hit. We can probably count on two hands the amount of references that it actually, overt references that it gives. But I will always fucking hate the dialogue stuff, and I think the last two in particular really spoiled it for me. I will always hate that. I will always fucking hate them doing things like that. Some of them work in context, kind of. The artificial person part. I was like, yeah, okay, I can actually see that a lot of them being quite inclined to say that, and the scene works into it well. Oh, and Rook. Rook's a major distraction, but I don't love it and I don't hate it. Well, no, I both, and it kind of cancels it out in a way. It's silly. There's a lot of things I love, and these things that annoy me, but they kind of cancel out the complaints, and I come out really happy.
Can I just say, it's like in a Terminator sequel, it's fine to see a hint of a red glow in an eye or something like that. But when every single one always shoehorns in, I'll be back, or come with me if you want to live. And it's way too on the nose that you always wish, why did you put that in? That is nothing but fan service. And it gets to a point where it's so much that it's purely there for promotional service. When it feels like that, it feels like they should have removed it entirely. When it's just something like the dipping bird, which, yes, we get one in here, but it's so in the background, you don't like, it's background fluff. Or like you say, the thing about, I prefer the term artificial person. That was fine because it was in context. It works. But
Yeah,
when you get certain other things, when it's clearly there for, we'll put this in a commercial or whatever, or it's just nudge, nudge, wink, wink, that's when it feels, get that. You should be better than this.
Shall we start talking the references now then? Is that the natural place to start? Because I feel like that's
if we're
really
going into spoiler territory.
I think it's really the more controversial aspect of the film.
Okay.
Real quick, I just wanted to
Right,
mention, for my second viewing, I saw it in ScreenX, which was, I think that's another just Regal format, at least in the US. And it's where the sides of the theater are also screens, but they're meant as your peripheral vision. They're an extension of what you're focusing on in the screen in front of you. And I've seen a few movies that way. I saw Avatar: Way of Water was the first, then The Creator, and then Napoleon. I thought this really worked well in ScreenX, especially for the scenes in space because it just feels so immersive. Um, Having the planet wrap around your theater or the stars, I thought, and a lot of movies with ScreenX, they won't have the walls on for the whole time. It'll only be during certain scenes, but it was a lot of scenes for this one. So I definitely feel like it's worth seeing in ScreenX if you have a ScreenX theater by you. Um, Aaron, I'm seeing it in D box tomorrow, which I guess is 40x without the atmosphere effects. It's just like the moving seats, and I've never seen a movie that way. So I'll see how I feel about that.
Yeah, I was going to try and get a 4DX, not 4DX, a Screen X showing as well, just to see. I've only seen one of the Godzillas in it, and I didn't really rate it.
Here's
But
the
just
thing: don't sit too far back in ScreenX. You want to be like the
it really
forward
in the
half
peripheral.
of the theater where the walls are actually in your peripheral, so you're not tempted to actually look at them because that'll break the illusion a bit. You want to be a little further than the center of the theater.
Okay, that's fair. I will try and take that into account. So, are we going to start talking specific, or we're going to start talking spoilers now? Then
Let's
Yep.
do it.
Okay.
Get
We
into it.
have to.
So those of you avoid if we have to. Those of you who want to avoid the spoilers, please do sign out and come back once you've watched the film.
It's worth it to see it.
So references. It's like Eric said, a lot of them worked into quite well. Andy's I prefer the term artificial person myself. I was like, that's fine. That's acceptable. All of Rook's stuff, I was like, yeah, I can forgive that because it's the same model. According to Fede, they're both extensions of Mother rather than their own entities as well. So that's not sure I agree on that, but I'm not sure I agree on that one. But
No, because you see he's talking to Mother, so they're separate.
Yeah, that's what I thought as well.
Yeah.
But I understood that. It's the it was the get away from her, you bitch bit. I was just like, don't do it. Don't do it. Because the scene itself is so fucking cool. Like that just Andy riding down, fucking landing on top of the alien, and the film has demonstrated Andy's strength and skills and ability to judge things. And that was such a cool moment. And I think if they'd have just left off the you bitch part, I'd have been okay with it. Yes, it would have still been an obvious callback, but it wouldn't have been so slapping me in the face with it.
So I didn't realize this at first, but Bjorn calls him bitch a few
several times.
So it
Yeah.
kind of sets that up. But
The
still,
film tries to
you.
set it up, but it is just the most in your face part of the film.
It's going
And
for a cheer from the audience, but I think most people they got a groan.
It got that at the premiere, and I think it got that in the IMAX showing that I went to, and I'm just there like, oh.
Yeah,
It got a laugh at my showing as well, so it worked for some.
I mean,
But
the
yeah,
thing is, like, general audiences are not going to take this as seriously as we are, and I think they're going to eat this movie up. It's doing really well. You look at, I think the cinema score was a B plus. Rotten Tomatoes is high, both user and critics. It's overperforming in the box office, higher than expectations. We'll see where it's at second weekend, but I really don't think The Crow will put up much of a fight. So I would say this is a success. Objectively, this movie is a success.
I think in terms of the dialogue stuff, I think if something, whether it's an action or in this case dialogue, if it feels like it would be at home in a Robot Chicken sketch, remove it. Like that part would have totally been in a Robot Chicken sketch where you see instead of Ripley come through, it's Bishop in the power load, and he does something and does the get away from her you bitch line. Because if you once you take it into something grounded, like how would a synthetic, like why would if even if Andy is going, oh, humans call one another bitch, it's calling a dead alien a bitch. I mean, it just feels like, no, why? It just feels stupid.
It did feel forced for sure. As
Yeah,
far
it
as the
felt forced.
callbacks as well, there were a number from Rook, and we'll get into spoilers now. Rook is Ash, well, at least the Ash model. You know,
Ash model.
Ian Holm brought back to life, which some have argued an ethical issue with that. I don't have an ethical issue with it, and I'm glad they got permission from the estate. That was good of them. I just think the effect didn't look right. It didn't quite work for me. Like you said, Aaron, it was distracting. I didn't see any narrative reason for it. I mean, Ash was kind of a secret model. Um, and I think what we reported Phoebe Waller-Bridge was cast as an android early on, right? So maybe
Yeah.
she was a possibility for this role. I kind of would have
What
preferred
happened with
that.
her?
Like, yeah, I just feel like it felt too much like, oh, he's from Alien, you know? Like, we are glad when the director's a fan, like Dan Trachtenberg with Prey, and it's obvious Fede is a fan. But when you have so many moments where it feels like, oh, the fans are going to love this, it just feels like overly referential, I feel like. And Ash was a big part of that for me.
I am in mixed thoughts about it because I really like to see multiple copies of the same synthetic model. You know, it's one of the things I like about the games revisiting Lance, and we get different models of Rook. Though to be fair, haven't we now had about two other copies of Bishop named Rook in the games and the books and stuff? But and like it was one of the things I really liked about Covenant, you know, was seeing two of the same on the same film. You know, we get Walter and we got David. I really like that. So from the perspective of us seeing another Ash type synthetic, I'm on board with that. I think it's perhaps not necessarily visual continuity or world building, but it's just logical. You know, that there are multiple copies of the same synthetic running around. And even though, yes, there is some, but Ash was supposed to be secret kind of thing, you know, it's not like Rook's out there on the surface of Jackson's star mingling with everybody. You know, he's there on the science station. He is manning this secret research facility. So,
Well,
yes,
what hurt it a bit more was the reused Ash lines too.
yeah. No, I understand that. I understand that. And I think perhaps if the deep fake had been a little bit more convincing, maybe we wouldn't be as distracted by it. I think it's more the effect that's distracting necessarily than his actual inclusion, the character's inclusion in the film. I had commented earlier on the message boards, and I've seen some other people share the same sentiment that it might have been better had it lent more into like the Bishop in Alien 3 kind of vibe of being this proper flipping mangled version of him where you could rely on the animatronic, but we also know how much of a pain that animatronic was in Alien 3. But I also feel like, and I think somebody said this on the boards as well. You know, Fede had said in an interview, you know, when he came out and said that they'd made sure they'd gone and asked Ian Holmes' wife and his family. They were like, "We want to do this. Is this something you would be interested in? Is this something you would let us do?" And they were like, "Yes, we feel." Ian felt like Hollywood really snubbed him in the last 10 years of his career or whatever, and we think it'd be nice for him to get this tribute. And somebody was saying, you know, perhaps that was more of a, we don't want to show his family a absolutely mangled version of their dead father and husband kind of thing. And yeah, I completely get that. I completely understand that.
I mean,
But
the character is mangled.
true, but his face is
Yeah, his face is
his face
intact.
is not.
Yeah.
And I completely understand that point of view, and I would probably expect that's where they're going. I think the chap who did his voice, I can't remember his name, Daniel something, I think it was. Have a quick look, sorry. Alien Romulus, Ash, not Ash, Rook. What was his name? Oh, this is thrilling. I'm not going to look at this. Um, sorry. Remember this time zone so I can cut it out later. The voice actor who did Rook was fantastic. I think he sounded so much like Ian Holm. I think them adding the tinge of the flanged
Yeah, the
damage
distortion, yeah.
to the voice worked towards that as well. But it's like Adam said, Rook isn't necessarily required. It is very, by necessarily, I mean he isn't required at all. You know, him being an Ash is not integral to the film. You know, he could have been some other random synthetic character and the film would have worked as well. It's a member berry in that regard, in that it's yes, it's this character from another film. It's a synthetic, so it makes sense that there are multiples of this model, but there is nothing specific about him um being an Ash model that is required. It's not like Walter and David and the brother um themes going off in Covenant. But I also don't think it's necessarily Daniel Betts. Thank you, Sarah, in the comments, who did the Ash performance in this. But it's like a bishop rook isn't required in the games, but it's never something that's made me go, "Ugh, what an unnecessary callback," because it feels relevant, it feels a part of the world. And if the deep fake could have been better on Rook, I don't think we'd have as many complaints about it.
I think I found it fine. The effects. I think the issue
Yes, well,
was they made him look younger. He looks. I don't know if it was because of the reference images that they had, but he looked younger than Ian Holm does in Alien. So I think they should have aged him up. But I put that down to he's meant to be like a new model just taken out of a packaging or something. I was a little worried who's going to identify himself as a Weyland-Yutani model when we always, he's Hyperdyne. They didn't do that. There was a moment where I thought they would. The thing that distracted it a bit for me was not the digital deepfake. I thought that was fine for what it was. Um, it was the fact that they've set up this obviously like the broken physical model here, and you can tell the actors poking their head through a hole because the neck's like this. It doesn't look like the neck is attached to the actual body. That was what was distracting for me. But the actual Ash deep fake, I had no problems with myself. I thought it worked really well for what it was meant to be. What is interesting with you two guys saying Ash wasn't necessary, which he wasn't. Um, now, Adam, you said, was it Phoebe Waller Bridge?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Now, on our forum, we're not just Facebook guys, we're a kind of actual discussion forum. There's Syntax has referred to an earlier version they saw. And one of those, I'll quote from their post, the inclusion of Ian Holmes stood out for me as this was nowhere to be seen during the early screening. Instead, it was just a voice of Mother. In retrospect, it could have been a placeholder. Now, I'm wondering, did they hire her? Now, we heard the news she got hired as a robot, a synthetic. Could it have been she was hired to do the voice of Mother? And then they decided, what if we can do Ash? I'm wondering if that's where that came from. But I think Mother might have actually worked better, maybe? Because Ash was effectively doing Mother. He couldn't move anywhere. He was just sort of at a console.
It's
He
a
could
fair
tap a
point.
few keys. I think it would have been interesting to hear just have Mother do that, because there is that moment in Alien and she's very emotionless, and she's, Ripley tries to set the self-destruct off and she just calmly keeps giving the countdown and Ripley goes, "Mother, you bitch," and she's, but you're kind of getting that, Mother isn't evil, but it's the start of that kind of fad of, is the supercomputer evil? It's like Whopper in War Games. And I think that could have been interesting, just hearing a disembodied voice, because also the advantage is that is it can go into any room you are on the station. Suddenly, Mother's there. And I think that could have been interesting. But for what it was, we had Ash, and Ash's performance, I thought, was It wasn't heartwarming, but it was. I knew Ian Holmes' likeness was in this. I thought the vocal presentation with that distortion, it sounded just like when you have Ash's severed head and it's got that sort of milky fluids thing in his vocal cords. It sounded just like that. And although there were like a couple of lines, I thought that doesn't sound quite like Ash, but for the most part,
But it's
it
not
was
Ash.
written. Yeah, it was Rook. Okay, but it was, you had those lines in there. Like I must apologize for discarding your petition or whatever it was, and I thought, yeah,
I really like that. I must deny your
yeah.
petition,
It
which
was
Rain
it
then
as well.
throws in his face at the end. I thought that was fantastic.
it was the yeah, and I like that she returned it, and it was the equivalent of when he says, you know, you have my sympathies, smug shit-eating smile in the original. It had that vibe when you got that vibe back. What I didn't like was that you had this hint right from the start. You had the original alien, and you're wondering, will which be seen? Will there be a cameo at the end? It's still out there. Maybe it got into an escape pod. No, dead body there, up hanging from the ceiling. It's a scarecrow. No more of that alien. And I thought that was a bit disrespectful.
Before we
But
move on
Ash
from
was
that,
fine.
Sarah has a good point here. But if it was a disembodied voice, we wouldn't have had the module into Andy to move the plot forward. So they
Could have
would
taken a USB from the mainframe or something, or a dead synthetic.
Yeah.
But there is ways to have done it.
Yeah, that's a good point, though. Good point.
I liked a lot of the line delivery from Rook, from Daniel Betts, and there was some. Here's okay. Before we move on, I love that initial shot of Bishop. Oh my god, of Rook when he shits up Rain. I love that. I thought that was a really creepy, terrifying shot. And I thought, a fair few good. I mean, I still think the deepfake wasn't quite there. I don't think the technology is there
Can
yet.
I just say, when you got that, did you think, like me, it was a little callback to his thing in Lord of the Rings where he says, you know, you have that Ian Holm thing where he's just goes,
I don't know. I didn't clock that one. But there was a scene. There was a shot when he watches everybody leave the lab. You know, when Andy's going to chase down Navarro, and I was like, that looks good. That's actually a very nice shot there.
He was formidable. He did have that foreboding sense to him. So
I liked that that Rook wasn't. It wasn't quite as overtly sinister as Ash became when the twist came. I really liked the holistic sort of nature of Compound Z01 and everything they were doing. I wish they'd have lent more into that numbers game kind of part of it. You know, the film sets up this idea of Bjorn's hatred of, perhaps hatred is a strong word, prejudice. His prejudice towards Andy. You know, the film sets it up because a synthetic made a numbers call and Bjorn's mother was on the wrong side of that call. You know, sacrifice the few for the many. They really should have lent into that with Rook and Andy's motivations throughout the film. Because I think that would have been a lot better. It's already there. It's already set up. It's already an interesting aspect of what they're doing, because the good of the company stuff was a bit rote. I really thought they should have lent into what we're doing now will benefit humanity in such a way that we can justify making sure fucking Navarro doesn't get off and infect everybody. I really wish they'd have lent into that.
Andy's performance kind of did in some cases. That's what's interesting. That line delivery, primary directive has not changed. It's for the company. Yeah, that was kind of it was set up better, and Andy something did that when he was closing the door on Tyler. How Rain commented, "You must close the door on us," and he turned and said, "But I didn't. I made a calculation even better than last time too."
It was a bit. It was a little too. And I calculated it perfectly. Or
Yeah,
did
yeah,
I? I was
No,
half expecting it,
I
but yeah.
really didn't think it was like that.
But you know,
That was not the read I
it
got.
was straddling the line. But I think they pulled that off. But yeah, there were moments that Andy had that
with K,
return, but it was
with K, he did that
yes,
well.
but I really like the fact that Ash 2.0 Rook, he started out like you were geared up because he was Ash, but he seemed to genuinely be like, if you value her life, put her out of her misery, or you're all going to. He seemed like he was genuinely okay. This is the situation. You are fucked. You have to do this, and he was genuinely trying to help them save their lives. This is like if Ash had been a good boy, and it was nice to see that, even
But
though
I think more
he went in
grey
that
than good
direction.
boy. But
Yeah,
that's why I like it. I like grey. I
if
like
he had been like,
ambiguity.
yeah, if Ash had been a bit more Bishop-like, and it kind of suited him. It suited him with that line delivery. But yeah, you had those nice moments where it wasn't too overt, and you were wondering, are they, aren't they? And then you got to this point where, yeah, they're doing it what's best for the company, but they're still trying to help because they kind of like they regard Rain and that as company assets, I guess. And you still kind of unsure, is Andy leading them to their doom or not? And then you have the moments where he's conferring with Ash. And I kind of wanted them to be a subplot of Rain to go, wait a minute, you're both synthetics. You don't have to speak to talk. What have you been communicating? Sort of thing. They didn't go there.
That's never really been something the films have done, though, and I
No,
kind of
but
wish
they
I
could
wish they
have.
would, because it's a
Yeah.
thing I like in the comments about like the near field from like Defiance. I
Mm.
really wish they'd lean into that because it kind of explains like some of the bits in Alien where like the doors start closing around Ash during the
Yes.
whole the
I don't
whole
know.
turn.
I kind of find it more interesting when the androids, like, they are very human-like, more than maybe we'd like to admit. Um, so the module bit was kind of interesting in terms of, oh, this just changes his directive immediately. Like, I mean, we've seen that before, like in Alien Resurrection, where Call's like, oh, I care about them because I'm programmed to. So that is a thing. I will say though, David Johnson's performance as Andy, fantastic.
Absolutely phenomenal. One of the standout things of the film
Yeah,
completely.
and his
And
dynamic.
you
Sorry, go
can
ahead,
tell
Eric.
he was channeling. He wasn't trying to do an impression of Ian Holm, but he was deliberately adding a bit of Ian Holm to his performance as Andy when he had that change, and then when he came out of the change, you could tell there was a reversion, which is a nice performance.
Yeah, I definitely feel like his relationship with Rain is the heart of the film, and it works for me. That's great. It was interesting though that the module upgraded him, and when the module was removed, I was like, wait, is he still upgraded? Because it seemed he still had like less of a stutter, and he was still more like he had more of an ability even after that module was removed.
He's still stuttering because the bitch lines are stutter.
That's true, yeah, but it just didn't seem quite as drastic. That's why I was confused a bit. It didn't seem as drastic as
Well,
he was in the beginning of the
it
film.
He
says
said
it
it was
says
repairing.
repairing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and his programming has ups and downs and needs to regularly be reset whenever any type of damage or concussion. It's up and down. And he's literally, even though he's a capable synthetic of the model that was talked about, the workhorse of the synthetic line that built the colonies, etc. But at the same time, he's weirdly kind of fragile in that way. So it was a very very nice balance to what you normally get from synthetic characters. And again, we've all praised the performance there, but to think for the actor to have to have so many of those characteristics at the same time, to think, okay, how do I portray the fragility of a outdated synthetic? How do I portray the superiority of a artificial plastic metallic being? How do I go with the foreboding route? How do I portray the more childlike characteristics? All of those aspects in one performance. he hit it out of the park.
I think he went. I don't know if he was even aware of it, but all through the interviews we've had with him, it has brought to mind the famous quote by Lance Henriksen about he played Bishop like, a black boy in apartheid South Africa, where he wasn't sure if he could do anything because if he gets punished for it, that kind of feeling. You did get that. It's not emotional vulnerability, but there was a vulnerability very much about Andy, and that came right from the first scene where he's kind of like he's wandering off, and Rain has to bring him back because she's saying, "No, they're trying to scam you." And you could tell he's he's like an adopted, abused dog, kind of. Yeah, it was like me speaking as an autistic person. I know from the interviews he said I can't play a Motorola sort of thing, but I can play, someone who's autistic or stuff. And I felt he was bringing those traits into the performance very nicely.
Another thing I wanted to mention, even though sometimes we'll rag on the callbacks, that's not to say we never enjoy them. I think it depends on how they're done. And Easter eggs are certainly fun for fans. And there was one in particular I wanted to bring up. I noticed a sound during the opening colony bit where Rain was talking to Tyler on her video watch for the first time. And they were just like little bleep blip sounds. And I was like, I know that sound. And I think it was the selection sound from Aliens versus Predator 2, the video game, which I know that game had a bunch of samples from earlier movies, but I don't remember that specific sound being one of them. So if that was indeed taken from AvP 2, um, bravo with that, because that is an awesome deep cut. And the Lone Fox on Twitter just rewatched the film and commented on my post on that and said that it seemed to be that sound. So I'll be listening for that the next time I see it.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to try and pay attention to that because that is the deepest of deep cuts. If that isn't an intentional thing, like there's things like the Nostromo. You know when the Nostromo's landing on LV-426 and you hear the shriek of some of the metal plating. That's in the film, and that's like okay, that's cool.
Yeah,
I like
they
that.
use as many alien sound effects as they can.
And that is fine to me. This film feels genuinely alien. It feels a part of this pantheon of films. It feels a part of this world more so than the prequels do. More so than I think Resurrection does. It just
By far.
It looks right, it sounds right, and it's much like that same sort of feeling I get when I'm walking around Sevastopol. I can tell these are people that have dug in and dissected these previous films, and they want us to feel at home in them, and it's absolutely top notch. The production design, the set build, it's fantastic. It really is. It's absolutely one of the highlights of this entire experience.
Yeah, I think when you're talking about like those kind of references, that is the kind of callback we don't mind. Like I recognized, but I love that they did it because it felt like actually that works for that. Is at the start where they're putting the laser cutter into the cocoon, and it's the sound you hear when Dallas is taken, and you just get that kind of screech of static, and Lambert and Ripley are calling for, but it's that jazz hands alien, and it's that screech, but you're getting it with a laser cutting it into the cocoon. But it works for that laser cutting into material. It actually sounds like perfect sound for it. But as an Alien fan, you know where it's from. So it's not obtrusive. It doesn't feel like it's, hey, have that. It's just you'll know this if you know it kind of thing.
Yeah, the whole movie felt very in the Alien universe, and I love how the retro tech was handled because you still see modern functionality in terms of the VidWatch that she's using. They have a handheld gaming device, so there's things we can relate to in a modern sense technologically, but it still has that clunky retro sci-fi feel. So it's like a modernized retro sci-fi, and I thought it was very cool how they pulled that off in the movie.
I didn't realize we've been in the comments there. I was actually mentioning the sound.
Yeah, Zen
Yeah.
had brought
I
that
didn't
up earlier as
realize.
well.
Yeah.
Here's a question from the audience, from Rob Harvey. What was your favourite piece of EU lore that Romulus has now introduced into the movie canon? So, just to talk broader than necessarily that, but one of the things I really, really like about the film is the reconciliation of the lore. You know, it has brought the prequel elements in to the main film in ways that the EU has been doing. You know, it's the way Alex White's been doing. It's the way the RPG has been doing. And it was super satisfying to me to actually have it end up on the cinematic screen, because everything the film did with tying the aliens in with the black goo a bit more, I loved. You know, when Rook called the alien XX121, I was like giddy, because I'm not keen on Xenomorph as a name for the alien, because I think it's too generic a term. But you know what Stephanie Perry did with the Weyland-Yutani report in making it a specific classification of it is something I've wanted to see the EU do more of, because I don't think the EU really touches on that. And to see it actually become canon, I was like, yes, we're gonna get some actual classifications here.
I'm sure Alex White was happy hearing a few things in this movie.
Alex messaged me after they saw the film, because the film canonized as Plagiarius Praepotens, and that's the bit where I was like, oh shit, Eric's fucking walking out this film right now. But as somebody who loves the concept, somebody who loves the Cold Forge and into Charybdis and loves Alex White as a person, I was so fucking satisfied to see that on there. And then I also noticed on my last showing, my third showing, one of the monitors has a picture of the facehugger on, and it's described as Manu Malinox Hydria, which is what Alex White calls the facehugger, the scientific name they call it. Then I was like, oh, that's another one. Then there's the rat thing. That's another kind of reference to into Charybdis with Blue's experimentation. So oh, guys, I had a big ass grin on my face whenever I noticed any of these elements being pulled into the EU, pulled into the canon, the cinematic canon.
I mean, I'm 50% on that, because I really don't like the facehugger retcon, but although a lot of people here were saying, well, the impregnation period is way too fast, and it is. It's like AvP. I think it's faster than AvP. This is covenant speed impregnation. However, it's clear that these are not the LV426 thing. These are as a result of screwing around with the genetic code. These aren't the original aliens. So these are like David 8 type. These are Covenant type aliens. These are the tumor cancer aliens, because this is literally what Ash says. Oh, it's, you know, it's screwing with your DNA and it's rewriting your DNA. This is not literally an alien organism. It's human DNA. It's a Resident Evil thing. But these are clearly not the alien. The only original alien is the dead one. So I'm fine with that. And I think from this, we have a way now to say maybe this was where the Cold Forge got their stuff. Although their ones had eggs, these ones don't have eggs. So someone has been tampering with the DNA code more. However, because of this, you have this really big problem. Weyland-Yutani has the code. What did they need Ripley for in Alien 3? That all of this is now out of the window.
It's all destroyed. There was no emergency backup taking place. The station's in bits on the rings.
Yeah, but I mean,
so it's
even
gone.
that, it's not answered. Why didn't Weyland-Yutani have people there? Like, it is literally orbiting above a Weyland-Yutani big facility. I'm sure they had security teams there. They've got no one there.
There's a few
Big plot hole.
There's a few logic issues.
Yes.
Sorry, go ahead, Greg.
Sorry, but yeah, I understand all of Eric's issues with those kind of plot contrivances there, but I've been talking like since Thursday to people about this nonstop. We've been mulling over it, but I think it kind of makes it can be logically explained in the sense that Jackson Star, the system, and that planet specifically, you don't see the sun. They don't see the sun ever, which means that even in the night sky you don't see the stars. So telescopes and radio communication would be a lot harder there. And they have regularly workers that are going out where, I don't know, to the belt or something, getting minerals and
I think
something
they
like
could have
that.
sent a signal there.
Yeah,
I
and
don't
you
think
do see
that would have been
ships.
an issue.
You do see ships coming and going in the beginning of the movie.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
these
yeah,
are just random people. It's not like they needed special training to get up there, which was interesting.
yeah, but the crew went in the sense of we've seen it first, and let's bloody hurry up
Yeah,
before
sure.
somebody else
But what I'm
does. So
saying is, it's
matter of time.
clearly they can just send a shuttle of people with guns up there if you go, because this would have been the kind of facility where there would have been regular check-ins, and if it goes dark, they know something's hit the fan.
It did,
Um,
yeah, it did seem odd that this is a top secret research facility that's just been drifting in
yes,
space, and
but
they've
I am,
lost track of it.
I'm hopeful are getting that prequel comic coming out, which apparently explains things. And we also have heard they were like 20 minutes or something deleted. So my hope is we might get some answers on things which at the moment seem plot holes. They might
I
not be.
I didn't pull my hair out with questions at this movie like I did with Covenant and Prometheus. But the
Yeah.
Likewise.
questions were there. It's like they spent all this time looking for the wreckage of the Nostromo. Didn't they know it's set down on LV-426? They couldn't have just gone there and gotten the aliens from that place. So there were a few questions in that regard, and I think the colony for LV-426 should have been being established at this very time, around this time.
So you would assume then that the beacon's already been turned off by the
Yeah.
volcanic activity,
Or
or
turned off in alien isolation.
Because,
turned off by
all
Marlowe.
this is why they would have sent the Nostromo. They knew a signal was there, so they knew the Nostromo was on the way. Is that they just didn't know from which, destination point.
Yeah.
I think that's okay if you assume Dallas or whoever turned it off while they were there. But then, like the film, this is what's a little infuriating about the film. There are points in the film where there are like solutions in search of problems. Like, for example, you have it now established, or at least by, I think, Rook. Now, we don't know, maybe he was making an assumption or a generalization, but we see it in action. He says, well, they don't, face huggers, they don't have eyes. Yeah, they detect you by heat and sound. It's now canonized. That's it. And then they come up with this great idea. I love the idea that I come at, well, what if we raise the ambient temperature of the room? And that's an interesting idea. Although
That was a cool set piece.
You're going through this thing, you're doing the equivalent of going through a burrow with giant spiders, and it didn't feel as tense as it should have been for me. It was something where it should have been dripping with tension, and for me, it just wasn't. But they do that. That now, I don't think they thought of. Hang on, when Kane went
How
down
does
in
it
with
get
the
Kane?
eggs,
Yeah.
not
It's
only
like
is
they've
he
got
in a
damn tropics.
yeah,
And
it's like
he's
the tropics, and he's in a suit. He shouldn't have been hugged. And colonial marines, when they went in the nursery chamber, they were saying it's like it's a dry heat. That whole thing was hot. They should have been invisible to the aliens. And of course, this film makes a fairly big deal about the black ooze. So it's factoring in the prequels. In Covenant, you see from the aliens' point of view, it has visual acuity. You see from its point
And
of
an Alien
view.
3.
Yes, but you like in Covenant, it's it's solidified because you're getting that sort of hexagon kind of thing. It's definitely from its point of view. So it's causing things in earlier films to go, hang on a minute, and Alien 3, if you are colder than the environment, and the whole Romulus makes a big deal about if you're in a cryo tube, you are cooled down, you're in cryogenic status. Ripley, New, they were all in cryogenic status, and the face hugger went directly to them. It should not have known they were there in Alien 3. It's caused by bringing up these new, and admittedly, they were interesting additions. I loved, let's bring the ambient temperature up, and it solves that dilemma. But it was a problem it was a solution in need of a problem. And by giving that problem, it's caused other problems to arise in hindsight. And it's making me think.
I didn't even think about the Alien 3 intro, but that is a great point. Yeah, I mean, I've always thought like
You
the
had
aliens.
one job.
I've always figured the aliens can actually see their environment. They have an image in their head, like we've seen in their perspective in Alien 3 and in Covenant. Even though they don't have eyes, they are seeing the environment some way. With the facehuggers, I can kind of take like, okay, they're a bit more primitive, like they're just hunting by sound or pheromone or heat signature or whatever. But yeah, that scene in Alien 3 where one is specifically going to the cryotube, that kind of disrupts that. But this is a movie where I think you'll run into problems if you're getting into your fanboy mindset and thinking about it real hard. Like, this movie is an effective dark ride through like a spooky sci-fi haunted house, and it works so well as that. And I've heard it described in some reviews as like feeling kind of video gamey, which is not a negative for me. Like, I honestly kind of liked it in the context of this film. And to answer Rob Harvey's question about my favorite EU element being brought into this film, I think it's just that I mean, it sounds kind of insignificant, but it's not for me. It's the alien isolation stuff, because that game was so special for so many fans, and just having the phone on the wall and the obvious isolation influence with some of the scenes, like the scene where the xenomorph is stalking Isabella Merced's character on that catwalk, just felt straight out of isolation. That's what I loved about the movie, is how it handled the xenomorphs. They were my favorite xenomorph designs probably since the original two movies. So I honestly kind of wish there was more xenomorphs in the movie. As you know, Aaron, someone who isn't the biggest fan of the prequels, the final ending, I was kind of like, the newborn deserves an apology from Alien Resurrection. But I know
Offspring was way
like
better.
the engineer stuff, and this very much evoked that with the Offspring. But yeah, in terms of like what was added from the EU to the film, the isolation stuff, not just in some physical objects, but in the atmosphere, like this, it felt like inspired by Dead Space too, which I also love.
Like the scene with the ship going around the side of the station and the lights coming through the windows. You know, I was like, that's kind of like when Ripley's in the atrium and the Torrens comes by, and I was like, even the curvature of the set, I was like, yeah, okay, that's some isolation love. And I saw a Tanaka poster on the wall of the cable elevator, whatever they were, the transit card that they were using. I forget what they actually called it in the film, but there was a Tanaka poster on the wall, and that is the deepest of cuts when it comes to isolation, because I don't think many people will remember the Mike Tanaka stuff. I think it was something that was very obscure during the film, the game's promotion, and I saw it during the IMAX show, and it was hard to see in the 4DX one on a more of a normal screen. And I was like, oh, yeah, somebody's getting in deep here. And even the transit car itself, you know, that shot of the elevator in the shaft, I was like, that's straight out of Isolation as well, with some of the set pieces that take place in the transit system.
Yeah,
my favorite bits. My favorite bits from the general EU references. Of course, I loved the Plagiaris Prepotens and the XX121. I was more kind of shocked to see that. I did find it funny that that it brings in the Cold Forge some way into the canon, which is lovely for such a good book and sequel. But at the same time, it either decanonizes it, like retroactively making it that this is where the terms came from, or it makes the main character, Blue Marsalis, a kind of liar and plagiarist with where they got the name from when they were explaining that they thought of it, etc. Which I don't think is the intention when you want to do a reference for a character there. But yeah, it's a little detail that you can just headcanon that, okay, that part of the book is changed or something
Well,
like
I
that.
mean, ultimately, the Cold War doesn't happen anymore, and that's always the thing when it comes to the EU. You know, it's canon until it isn't. When a film comes along and steals a few elements, which makes the rest of it not quite work, and that's just the way of the EU. It's just how
Yeah,
it works. I
yeah,
mean, the
but
concepts are now there, but the specifics of how they were originally conceived no longer
I
work.
think like we have to examine any film. It's not just for the fans; it's for casual audiences. Like with my Alien fan hat on, the moment we see this pulse rifle, like it's a really neat combination of smart gun and pulse rifle. It's got this thing goes over the shoulder, and at all times it's a nice idea. But like with my like as a casual cinema guy, and you're seeing it in action, you're thinking, yeah, that's cool. With my Alien fan hat on, I'm going, you're seeing aliens with a big. They're not even just casual; they are bright yellow verging on white heat signatures. And when you go to see Aliens, which chronologically is set after this,
I'd also
Dietrich's goes
thought the same
right
thing as
past
soon
it.
as they showed
Yeah,
the
you don't
Oh,
even have to veer
I
into
didn't even think about that
AvP
either.
territory. You don't even have
well,
the Predators. It's the Colonial Marines. They don't have a heat and they're bright. And so at that point, I'm thinking, was it that the nest was hot, or was it just there were so many aliens that they were making the place feel hot? But as a
technically,
casual goer, it looked cool.
yeah, I had a few problems with gun as well. Though the ability to even track them wasn't one of them because I didn't take it to be heat tracking. It's never specified exactly in the film that that type of tracking is heat tracking. It can be tracking like the motion tracker does. It can be
Yeah, because the synthetics have never really been demonstrated to be emitting heat, have they? And it was
yeah,
tracking
I mean,
handy.
they
and
would. It's
the
yeah,
sentry guns and smart guns in the
yeah,
wider lore are also said they don't have only heat tracking
Yeah.
because yeah they wouldn't be able to
yeah.
shoot
But I mean,
aliens. They
it's
have
clearly showing up
filters
a
around it.
thermal
It
imaging
might not be
sight.
thermal. That could just be
It,
some way of highlighting the
it didn't really
area.
look too thermal to me. It's possible. It's possible, but since it wasn't said, I was like, okay, okay,
Yeah, yeah, I
that's
agree. Yeah.
good
It's
enough
just
there.
what's heavily implied. So yeah, as fans, we have to assume it's it's not that, it's magnetic resonance or something. But to a
Yeah.
casual audience, it's going to look like that's a thermal imaging site. That's predator vision practically on that. But there's a lot of like you have. There's just it looks gorgeous. It has stuff like the acid, and it looks like actual liquid held in zero gravity. And it's such a great scene, and yet they have zero gravity, and we don't get that thing me and Aaron were looking forward to, which was an actual fight with an alien in zero gravity, sort of doing a crocodile swimming towards it. We don't get that. And
It
that's
still
where I was
worked
kind of,
very well for me.
it worked, but this is what I meant. Like, there are scenes where I thought, we're going to get that. No, we don't get that. Okay. And there are moments like that. So I'm glad we got the acid, because acid is, we got some nice acid damage
Yeah.
stuff in this. But zero G in an alien film without any aliens actually fighting in zero G, it didn't go there.
I loved all the
They were
zero
running.
G stuff.
Yeah, they were running at rain when she turned off and did the Centrigon analog scene. So they were technically in zero G at that moment, but yeah, they were holding on to the rail because you can't really move well in zero G. That's why they were a bit slower there. But yeah, I understand uh, the wish to see more of it because yeah, I do agree with that sentiment that there are lots of interesting ideas and lots of interesting set pieces put in the film that I really loved how they looked and felt. It does feel like a roller coaster ride, but at the same time, I want more of this. I want it to be even more expanded to see more of it. It got me intrigued, but um, it didn't go uh, all the way in the sense like I was left wanting more. Not so much in a disappointed sense, but maybe as a I hope there are deleted scenes or an expanded
Yeah.
version, or if he ever gets to do a sequel, I would like to see more.
Yeah.
Things incorporated there. But yeah, I do agree that things
I
are
mean,
Like
set up.
what I
Interesting.
was looking forward to if there was an alien in Zero Gravity, I was looking forward to it because it would give emphasis to their kind of, like in the first two films, they are graceful ninja ballerina assassins. They move gracefully. There are parts they strike, they take, like Brett is an obvious example. He's just taken up. You see that amazing shot with just reflected in the cat's eye, and it's just solemnly looking up. And you play into these sort of like they're moray eels, and they're squids. They come out of the darkness, they nab you, they're phantoms. And I thought that would play so well into a zero G environment. And instead, what we actually got with the aliens is like we got kind of like Adam's going to have to forgive me for this, but we got Requiem aliens where they're not doing any of that. They're sort of roaring their presence. They're not being silent. They're not doing the creeping up so much. We don't see any of the kind of outflanking when she's got the literal aimbot mode on the gun. I was hoping we would see like the when Vasquez and Drake are shooting with their smart guns, and there was the one that did the ambush, and it almost it
Yeah.
got Drake
Well-
with it, something like that. But we didn't get any of that kind of ballerina, stealthy assassin stuff. We just got a shoot 'em up range.
We got some of that. I believe I liked how parts of that were portrayed in the scene with Kay when she was first trying to escape the alien. Um, Later, when she was pounding on the door, the alien
The
was
release,
coming
yeah.
really quiet.
It mortally wounded her when it abducted her, which I thought.
But it learns, and it doesn't do that to Rain.
And where were all these other aliens? We learned it's not just Scorch or
Well,
Scorch.
that's
There are
actually
dozens, and then
that's
they
actually
show up
something
and they're gone.
that's one thing I wanted to bring up, because that felt very Alien Isolation inspired, where you're focused on this one main xenomorph, and then you have the scene where it snatches Tyler and he looks over and he sees all of them running with these strobe lights, and I love that shot.
That's a cool shot.
And so that was a great reveal, like, oh, there's a hive, there's more than one alien. And that felt like it was similar to Isolation. And just to cap what I was saying before, your mileage will probably vary with how much you like the ending based on how much you like the prequels. Like for me, it was like and even just the logic of it, like you have a literal countdown going on before the ship hits the rings, and I wasn't quite sure what was going on with the autopilot and the manual pilot of the cargo hauler at that point.
That's one of the logic flaws I have in the film. That moment. Later on.
But
my second viewing was needed for that to see what was happening. It is kind of strange, but it does make sense when you look at it again.
But the hybrid creature gets to be like this massive, like 9-foot tall thing in literal like 2 minutes. So no one gets to criticize AvP ever again for the incubation time between him and the Xenomorph in this movie.
Saw the black goo. Saw the black goo.
The black goo does everything.
I mean,
to
to be fair, Rook specifically calls out it increasing the metabolism, and there was also a line that was cut from. So it's in the B-roll. It's in the behind the scenes B-roll when Andy offers Tyler the Z01 thing. He specifically says something about it increasing her metabolism and healing it. I wish that had kind of made it into the film just to hammer that home a little bit more.
But for me, it was kind of like I knew the hybrid was coming. It was something that was kind of spoiled for me. But I was hoping it'd be like Isolation, where we see the Scourge Xenomorph again, because I just love the design of him so much. I wanted a little more Xenomorph. But I mean, that whole sequence at the end is also very similar to the original Alien. She's just about to get in the cryopod. She's in her sleepwear.
Well, it's more than just Alien. You know, it's Alien, Aliens, it's Prometheus.
Yeah, it's not just Alien.
AvP,
It goes back to old horror
Alien
films.
Resurrection.
What did they take from
the
AvP?
monster's dead?
Well, no, there's the mysterious fourth act in AvP, isn't there? You know, when Scar and
There's the Queen.
Lex are on the surface and they're like, oh, we've made it out, and then the Queen bursts out.
Right. That is a common staple of Alien. Yeah.
We're
safe, and then you're not.
But I do think it's worth saying that we had a lot of promotion about Scorched Alien, and it's not like Grid Alien.
He's barely in it.
It's not really prominent.
I was
but
hoping to see more.
We do get suddenly lots of aliens. Okay, do something with them, and what they're there to do is to instantly get shot up. and they don't really do anything. I think it would
Smashed
have
by an
worked
elevator.
better. Yeah, I think it would have worked better if it was just the one alien and all the face huggers. I think it would have been executed better as a film. And yeah, The Offspring, I think they should have deleted that completely. I thought worse of the film for the Offspring thing.
Completely
I
disagree.
kind of agree with
But let's
there.
not go on to Offspring yet. Let's not go on to the Offspring.
Okay.
I just want to clear up the having multiple aliens. Where were they during the first part of the film? Of course, a lot of people noticed that, and
They were asleep.
my reasoning was that in Aliens, they were asleep until you went in the hive. So
Yeah.
of course Scorch was there. He was born, and
Yeah,
all hell broke loose in that. But
but
they were asleep doing their thing
but
until you
this
come
isn't
there. They leave it.
this isn't like Aliens. The Marines are doing their thing way over at the colony. They have to drive to the atmosphere to process
But
that. It's
they
a
also
long
encounter a
distance.
facehugger in the colony itself. So there's still an alien there that interacts with them in some fashion.
Yeah, but it's doing its own roving patrol. In here, this is the equivalent of if they'd all turned up in the atmosphere processor. I think they're all going to be, noticed
Given the size of the station from the exterior, I mean, it's on the other side of the friggin' thing for a start. So it's not like they necessarily were awake to the
And-
I
goings
mean, it's
on.
not a big thing. I just think there should have been a reference to like that section of the ship had been locked off or something, maybe, because as it is,
Well,
you do feel we should have seen
Rook does
references.
say he's locked the station down, if you remember rightly.
It does. Okay.
He does,
See,
yeah.
at the
such a
start, it
blink and
wasn't.
you
It
miss it
wasn't locked.
moment.
So they probably saw that we've got all the people, nothing else to do. They were asleep. And again, in Aliens, it's not like at the second that the Marines came into the atmosphere processor, the aliens from the hive attacked or were studying. They weren't even ambushing and doing nothing when the Marines were in the hive. They were all
I mean,
asleep
I put
until
that
we got
down
the chest
to
piercers. So
yeah. I mean, I put that down to they knew there was a birth about to happen. They wanted the birth to be safe. Then they were going to move in.
maybe,
But yeah,
with
If
I don't
anything,
anything,
it'd
think
have been safer
aliens.
that they get rid of the potential threat before they let the burst
yeah,
Well,
happen.
maybe, but I don't I don't think aliens sleep. So I mean, they can go.
There's some sort of
dormant in
rest
a
or shutdown.
cocoon.
yeah. It's like
They make cocoons apparently when they sleep. So, as per the start of this one.
So
when they grow.
just yeah, hand when they grow. Just sticking on the alien stuff though. I
Yeah.
fucking love the visuals of the alien in this film. We don't get a lot of the alien, but I think that's where it leans heavily into the alien style of seeing the alien. You know, the first when we see it coming out of the cocoon, which is one of my favorite sequences of the film. You know, when I saw that at the footage presentation back in June, I've not stopped thinking about it. It is just such this wonderfully shot, grotesque birth, which kind of it kind of parallels nicely with the other birth we get later on in the film. But as it's coming out, it's glimpses, it's details, it's never we never get a good lingering full shot of the alien, and the one full shot that we get is backlit. It's in vapor and it's silhouetted and it looks gorgeous.
It reminded me of that AvP teaser where we just saw the close-ups of the exoskeleton. That immediately came to mind when I was seeing it.
Oh yeah, AvP
But
2010. Yeah.
well, I think Eric's thinking more about the old AvP movie teaser. The initial teaser trailers were just pans of the suit,
Yeah.
from way back when. But no, I like that. There was lots of similar shots like it. You know, you don't the aliens when you see them coming in the hive when we see the multiples for the first time, it's silhouetted. You don't see a great deal of detail. One of my favorite shots and one of the few things that did actually register with me when I saw it at the gala showing was the shot of the alien standing up over Andy's body in the hive with the blue laser going and the facehuggers coming. I was like, that looks fucking cool. I love it. And I kind of like the fan in me is like, just show me the fucking what's the line from Mandalorian? I want to see the baby. Show me the baby, or whatever he says in Mandalorian. And yeah, the fan in me is like that when it comes to I want to see my money shots, but you don't really get a good view of it. Like even later on, when it does the sentry gun scene, I love the fluid movement of the aliens crawling on the hive sort of ceiling and the top of the walls. By the way, I thought that looked gorgeous. But like even when that sentry gun scene kicks off, and it's edited a lot like the sentry gun scene as well, where the impacts on the aliens are quick cuts. You're seeing quick bits and pieces of it. I I liked it. I can't wait for the film to come out so I can actually freeze frame and take stills of those particular moments. Um, but I see what they were going for, trying to maintain a little bit of that alien not showing everything. But it's one of those points where I'm like, Fede, I know what it looks like. Come on, just let me see more
Yeah,
of
but
this
it
fucking gorgeous
works.
detail, please.
You're going to play the alien like anything else to its strengths, and I've
Yeah,
always
that's
loved
fair.
that Dennis Bouvet artwork. He's done a lot of that silhouetted look, and I've always thought I would like to see more of that, please, in a film. And we got that here, and I really loved when we got that. For the same reason as I loved, as I say, that shot with Kay, where it's been released as a scene anyway, as a promotional thing, but it was so very alien-esque. Brett meets the alien. The cinematography matched perfectly, and you did get that claustrophobic isolation vibe when she is going through that machinery, and you're using the ship as a character at that point, because you're not even sure what is this part of the ship. It's just like in the Nostromo when it's just random helicopters and stuff. You're seeing that, and because in this film we get biomechanical looking aliens again, that helps to camouflage them, which is always a nice thing as
Finally.
well. Yeah. Yeah, I really love the whole silhouette thing, and sometimes you get that gas blowing the smoke around the alien, which always works super nice. Because I think Adam, you'd agree with him when they did the Halloween horror stuff. Didn't they do some of that with the AvP props there, where they were blowing like
Yeah,
smoke
they
around?
they kind of had these upper body puppets that would come out of these holes in the wall, and they would just have like smoke surrounding it. So I
Yeah.
did love those shots of the xenomorphs in this movie, and they used a lot of that in the promotional stuff for the movie as well. Um, so yeah, and even when the xenomorph is birthed out of its chrysalis in that one scene, there's a lot of mist going on there, so that was really cool to see. And
It's like an 80s music video sometimes, but it for the best of reasons.
mhm.
Like, don't get me wrong, I completely understand why it's good to keep them in the shadows and how effective it is. It's just that little bit of the fan, the
Yeah,
nerd,
I felt that too, Aaron. It's one of the things I really like about Alien Resurrection, just how much we get to see the xenomorph. Some might say too much in that movie
but is
because you
that
do want
because
to keep
people
them
don't like the
scary.
design?
Maybe, I don't know. I think, yeah, you still want to keep them shrouded a bit, but I felt we could have seen more xenomorph in the movie. It was still nice. We got way more than we did in Covenant. So, and the design was awesome. I loved it being biomechanical again.
I'm
So I will
surprised.
take it. But
I'm surprised we didn't see more of Scorched. The marketing really sort of made it feel like he was going to be
Grid.
the Grid, the primary alien. To be fair, though, we don't really see that much of Grid. I mean, more of him than we probably do of Scorched. But
Abyss, yeah.
The thing with the Grid is that Grid made such an impression with that fight and everything. That's why he was memorable from the instant. And yes, Scorched also has very memorable moments, but it was in shots here and there and lingering horror. So I do get that maybe even shot for shot, maybe it's not that Scorched is less on screen than Grid is, but Grid scene wise, contextually wise, did more important things and made a bigger impact there. So I understand that people were left wanting more. And I also completely agree that the the design was so well done in the sense that we finally get back to that biomechanical texture that we've all been waiting for since God, I mean, since Alien 3, and
Yeah,
even there it was questionable.
it's
So
another
the
one of
amount.
those reasons. It's another one of those reasons where I'm like, I want to see the DVD, the Blu-ray.
Yeah.
Sorry, come on, Aaron, you're in the fucking 2020s. I want to see the Blu-ray so I can pause it on like the scenes of it coming out the cocoon and get a look at the actual detailing of the suit and stuff like that.
And yet,
Those were my most favorite shots as well. Right after getting out of the chrysalis, the panning, the close-ups on those textures. The main menu of Aliens: Dark Descent is in a similar fashion, just you see how much the artists really felt a reverence for that creature and that texture close up. I think that's maybe one of my favorite shots of the whole film. So I adored that. And yeah, when multiple of the aliens came in, I also was like, yeah, I wanted to see a bit more of them. But I like that on my second viewing, it helped that I saw more of the details. Like there are tiny bits and pieces of interesting things that happen, like for what we're calling the centricing, but yeah, when with the main pulse rifle variant, when Rain is shooting up the aliens, you do see at the very, very, very end, on the corners of the canvas, you see that some of the aliens backed off and
Yeah,
retreated.
when
So I love that little detail was thought of and remembered from even aliens, and explains then why in elevator we see a lot more. So
I,
I like that those details are there.
I wish we'd have seen the bodies though. The bodies disappear in
Yes,
that sequence, which was a
yes,
little bit okay. I was I'm able to get on board with it because I just really enjoy that whole setup and where it goes to in the zero G. As soon as I clocked on to what she was going to have to do very very quickly, but it was still satisfying to see. And the pulse rifle itself, the F-44AA. I give them major props in this film. I give the production design major props in this film for actually fucking making a futuristic gun and not throwing out
An
a
extra rail
modern.
on the og.
Yeah, because they hid this very well. There's some. I was kind of hoping they'd show the weapon be a bit faulty in some capacity,
yeah,
as a very simple shorthand way to say yes, these weapons could have been potentially better than the M41A. Here's a reason why we don't see them used more often. But this is one of those ones where you have to be like, you have to bring real world logic into it and go just because they're good doesn't mean they're actually going to get used. They might be too expensive. There might be some backhand general stuff going off.
breaking too often, etc.
All of which is very realistic stuff. Yeah, they might.
Yeah. So somebody else pointed on some of the boards that cool possible reasoning. It's fan explanations, but there is credence in the film. We see how easily it locked onto Andy. Maybe there's not detailed controls that you
The
can
IFF
choose.
isn't good enough.
So,
Yeah.
so maybe there were hilarious amounts of friendly fire incidents. So if you have to have civilians in the way, that's a very big problem for a standard gun. So maybe that's why the Colonial Marines were like, okay, let's separate a normal pulse rifle and a smart gun,
well,
so we
no,
have
no,
It will be
standard
it,
thing.
it'll be easy to explain that retroactively.
Yeah,
Very
yeah, but
simple.
I
There
mean,
is a myriad of reasons.
you could just have it where you turn on smart targeting and turn it off. I mean, you could still have the functionality with it. What I was mystified by design wise was we did start to get some heavy promotion, and you even saw it in the commercials where there was a big finger in a jar of the barb on the face hugger's legs, and they didn't
It
do
doesn't get used at
anything
all.
with them.
No,
And
it
I
would
thought that,
it
like,
would
if you're
have been
going to use
nice
it,
I was
mm,
expecting for Navarro
on
to have
Navarro.
yeah,
a lot
because
more, but no.
yes, because you have this whole thing. They figure out a way to get it off, and I thought, you've done the tail, but those things they're like bird talons, and no.
I This is where I do have a teeny bit of a criticism of the film. Is it just didn't feel as intense as I was kind of expecting. This wasn't Fede doing Evil Dead, and I kind of have to wonder if there's a more I don't want to say gory cut, because I don't think the gore's what makes it necessarily intense. But
No, you
I feel
compare this to getting the face hugger off of Ripley, and it took Hicks, and that is such an intense scene. It still is, and it feels like the thing has inertia and superhuman strength, and this doesn't have that intensity, as you say.
so I think that's where the barbed kind of things could have made it more intense. I don't. I know I was like, yeah, it was probably fine at a 15 rating, all the other alien stuff is nowadays. But I'm like, yeah, but this just didn't affect me or unnerve me or unsettle me the same way that Evil Dead did with its, again, I don't want to say gore, but the gore does
Tree.
the gore does play. Yeah, that fucking, well, at least it wasn't comedic like in the fucking original. I'm not a
Yeah.
fan of the original Evil Deads. I'm sorry, they're fucking stupid films. Which
Hey,
of
come
course
on
is
now.
the
Evil
entire.
Dead 2 and Army of Darkness are pretty good.
The
I
TV
kn
show is really good. It straddles that balance well.
But I digress. Sorry, I
Yeah.
just don't feel like the film was really being fed at its full. I feel like it was a little bit tame. I think the film really unsettles me at the end. When we do get the Offspring. Not that I want to jump onto the Offspring yet, but just talking, that intensity and that unsettling.
That's
I genuinely hope there's a longer cut in here with more of Fede in it.
That's why I said it wasn't the film I was expecting from this director. It doesn't feel like this was Fede Unleashed. And yet I'm sure in interviews and stuff, he will say, no, this is exactly what I wanted. But
He
it
does
doesn't
say
feel like it.
he does say he was given lot of freedom in this film, and he had a fantastic experience in terms of
Yeah.
not being not having the studio breathe down his neck.
It
Yeah, I
feels
agree
like the
with
ending
his choices.
was more representative of, like you say, Fede Unleashed. I mean, the movie does have that tension that we've come to expect, and I love Evil Dead 2013. Like, I thought the remake, especially the director's cut, which we did get a more intense director's cut with that, so there is hope.
More
Um,
intense.
yeah.
I had to walk out of the theatrical cut.
Wait, so he
um,
does make director's cuts? Because I was
he
never
he did
sure.
for Evil Dead 2013. Yeah.
Oh,
I don't know about Don't Breathe, which I did enjoy. So I saw his style here, how well he handles tension and focusing on characters as they're just going through hell, and this unrelenting survival situation. Um, I could very much see him in terms of the whole movie, but yeah, it did feel. I'm like, we could have gone just a little more visceral. Like I'm with you with that, Aaron. But it did feel to me like a Fede film. And again, like I feel it's just a very cool, spooky Halloween kind of time movie. Um, so I know we've been ragging on it a bit with our fan nitpicks and stuff, but overall, like I'm just so thrilled about this movie and how well it's doing. How many people are talking about Alien, even all the posters we've gotten for this movie, and we haven't even gotten into some stuff like the score for the film. Like Benjamin Wallfish's score, I thought was excellent. Um,
absolutely brilliant.
I love Jed Kurtzel's score for Covenant. I thought this was like I'm with this score more. Like this score felt awesome to me. I love what he did with the electronic stuff that we kind of saw a bit of in Alien Isolation, because Alien's always been very orchestral, and this still is, but implementing some more of those electronic like pulses, I thought was such a cool sound in this movie.
I felt like it was more, and Greg, you'll be able to talk about the entire soundtrack stuff a lot better than any of us can, resident musician and all. But I felt like it was very ambient rather than melodic. And don't get me wrong, yeah, there's obviously melodic pieces throughout. There's the theme of Andy and Rain, and there is a little motif that seems to be, the main carry through of the film. But yeah, there was a lot of like ambient tracks. I've been listening to the soundtrack today and yesterday, and it's more of a vibe, tone, a feel. to the film than any specific sort of melodies that I can shout out at. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. That that opening scene and that opening track on the soundtrack is fucking phenomenal. You know, there's a mixture of everything about Wallfish's sort of style and approach to this soundtrack. You know, it is that particular motif. I can't fucking num it. But there is like a particular little theme that's going off before it gets quite ambient as well. And then it sort of has this very vocal, I found very 2001-esque sort of crescendo as in the movie. Obviously, we finally seen the imprint of Big Chap in his little cocoon thing. But that whole the opening sequence, gaps in the logic aside, of that whole opening of the film, but that whole thing was just fucking fantastic. Just the way it builds up, it opens. This is where people might criticize again that reference thing. It opens very much like Alien. We see this automated ship. It starts coming to life. The music is just completely building and mysterious and haunting. I
Yeah.
think that's the best way to describe that opening scene and that opening music. You know, it's fucking haunting.
Yeah, I love
Um,
that opening bit as well. It felt like a combination of the original Alien and Alien 3 with those kind of cuts to what was happening. The original Alien, like I think it even had the same credits fonts
yes,
in
yes, it does. It
the
does.
opening. But yeah, that was so spooky seeing all the scientists and the chains lowering this thing down. So yeah, I love the opening bit as well. I thought it was a very good establishing the setup for this film.
Yeah, be more with you guys. That opening of Romulus, I think it's one of my favorite openings in all of the Alien franchise. Of course, discounting the logical problems, but from a from a storytelling combination of visuals, audio, sound design, and the music, it works on such a great level. I mean, for Fede to have the courage to start out the film with reference to Alien 3, you have to have some confidence for
Love
that.
that, by the way. Absolutely
I
fucking loved it.
adore that.
Films
That
do not play with that logo enough. If I remember rightly, they like in AvP they were going to do it in Predator Vision mode and stuff like that. Did one of them end up doing that? I think one of them did, but
maybe in a
uh,
trailer or something. I don't
I don't
remember if
remember.
in the release of the film, but to have immediately the film open like that, I was smiling from ear to ear. That's of course my favorite opening because it does a simple but genius musical variation of that theme, how to pervert it and just show, yeah, this ain't gonna be your everyday adventures. And the thing that I generally love about that theme is it's something that we associate with a studio and that's expected, and you get that just cut and distortion at the end of it, which is uh, very enigmatic to the Alien franchise in the sense that the people, the characters that are in there that are living it, they're living their normal lives, and they come across the most unconventional things that disrupt and uproot them completely. So I love the metaphor in that, and how in such a relatively short period you see the combination of, again, all those elements from the cinematographer side. That I love the shot of just the blank space with stars. it, you can do that in a million different ways, but though the darkness and the lack of color with the amount and density of the stars, or the varying sizes of them, and the subtle approach of the ship all in black in complete silence, and how long they have the courage to linger on a silent scene like that. I had people who were going like, is it true that you don't hear anything in space? And like, yeah, that's what a film is supposed to uh, invoke, and that something is different, something is wrong. This is not on a planet. This is not on Earth. Something that you know and you're comfortable with. This is something wrong. And then, of course, the classical alien sounds that are opening. But when we approach the big chap being hauled in to that probe ship, how in such a relatively short time you get the motifs from uh, Alien and Aliens, and like Aaron rightly pointed out, at the end we have that 2001 kind of illusion and that scream of the choir at the end. Uh, It's not easy for a composer to cram in so many themes, but to make them sound like they're part of the same track, that they fit together. It can be very, very extremely jarring when you just snip and try to connect that, even with simple methods of matching the tonality. But to do it in a relatively subtle way that again emphasizes the storytelling of those scenes so well, that opening lives in my head rent free. It's really astonishing. And so the other ambient tracks that are uh, more present throughout the general film, I think, is also it's not an everyday thing where a composer can vibe with a director like Fede has emphasized that he wants track lists and musicless scenes so that when you hear a certain theme from any of the films, it carries more weight and more emotionality. And those shots when the Corporal 4 was getting out into space and you see the planet and you see how they're approaching the station, the tracks help you emphasize the emotion. Like it's not the type of soundtrack where it's the soundtrack is telling you what to feel. Uh, it it just emphasizes the general emotion that the audience can be feeling, one or the other. It it suits. It walks a very very fine line between grandeur and curiosity, but at the same time, always something foreboding. Always something isn't right. So
It's very
beautiful.
unsettling throughout. I think there's a lot of dissonance in some of the sounds that he's using. I mean, I'm fairly sure. Do you remember the big fucking metal thing that Elliot Goldenthal used in Alien
Uh,
3?
yeah, yeah. I
I
think those sounds are there as well.
yeah,
Uh,
it fits because it's like this weird dissonant tone that's unsettling to hear, and that's very much the vibe I get from a lot of the tracks. You know, ambient or the melodic sort of tracks going off is just this really disturbing feel throughout the film, and it works so well.
well, most soundtracks in horror, I mean, they, they are usually very well done because there's such an emphasis on them. But there is a closer relationship between ambient light tracks and uh, the the melodic tracks are less noticeable. So everything can generally fit and not get out of line too much. But here I also felt that there is a bigger distinction. The ambient tracks are a lot more subtle and a lot more, as you said, they're just to build the atmosphere. But then when you get the melodic tracks, either from the films previously that are subtly incorporated, but they're noticeable references, but also the original ones. I remember when um, Andy was shut the door where Bjorn and the Bjorn, Navarro, and Kate they closed the door on Andy and they were like going to uh, go out before the chest bursting scene, and you see that shot of Andy backlit, completely dark, and then you hear that track that Paul's sing. It's done brilliantly. It's again, it's not that easy to subtly combine those electronic sounds of modern, more complex instruments with the classical acoustic ones. So I'm really, really just extraordinarily happy that we've got another noticeably great entry to the soundtracks of the film franchise. So I'm happy for that.
Did folk like the reuse of the Prometheus stuff when they were talking about the black goo? Yeah,
I like that thing. I like
I
that thing.
liked
But
it.
again, it was subtle. It was short, but yeah, we know what.
It's literally just that movement
Yeah.
before it then goes into this sort of atmospheric um,
Uh,
feel again. It was appropriate. Stuff like that I don't mind. So like there's a track XX121 which must I don't really remember it that great in the film. I'll be honest. I take a soundtrack a bit more in when I'm listening to it in isolation because you don't have all this other shit going off and distracting you. Um, and then I can appreciate it more in the film, and I need to go back and watch it again just to make sure. But the track's called XX121. That's when you have like the Goldsmiths sort of stuff going off in there, and I don't feel like those musical references are there, but they're not overdone. I didn't personally feel like they were overdone at all, and it's using them in thematically relevant moments.
yeah. At least it wasn't fourth wall breaking like Covenant was.
Yeah, when you have David composing the theme himself. Yeah,
Mm.
that's absolutely fair. Fucking, that was ridiculous. Well, Eric, Adam, what did you guys think of the score?
I mean, I thought it was great. I got the vinyl. The artwork looks cool on it.
Oh,
But
that's
yeah,
something else as well. I wanted that on CD. Why have I got to buy an MP3 version of it? I don't want to buy a fucking record player to own a physical copy of
CDs
this
are more
soundtrack.
rare than vinyl now, man. But yeah, it was. I thought a very effective score, and I love the incorporation of the electronic elements, like we saw most notably in the credits of Alien Isolation, because that was a really cool electronic track. I thought. Um, so for a series that is known as being so orchestral, yeah, you got to maintain that integrity a bit. But I love seeing a little bit of electronic flair put into that.
Rob Harvey says, "Did the shape of the Prometheus vial we got to see come from within the black?"
That
That was
felt
a
a
bit
little
fourth wall breaking. That one was.
exposition-y. I'm like, wait, they got the shape of the vial from getting the black goo from the face hugger, and I'm like, how are they cloning
Well,
face huggers
it's
when
not
from
even.
Big Chap? Like, so
I wish that had have had a little bit more explanation.
Also,
But
face huggers were literally unnecessary for what they were doing. We don't know why they were cloning face huggers.
I
Oh,
assume
the
to
black goo
extract the
they're getting.
Purgarius.
Yeah, the
yeah.
black goo is from the huggers. The huggers were being milked.
No,
Let's not lie
they
for
came
it.
from the original
No, so
alien.
he was able to bioengineer the facehuggers from Big Chap's DNA,
Yeah, but
and then they
the
got the.
black ooze was from the adult alien.
That's not what it implies.
That's
It's like the.
It's
that was
shown.
my
It's
take.
shown in the
Yeah,
laboratory. You see
you
the
see the
pile of
facehugger.
them with the tubes and the
Oops.
black ooze going through them.
Oh, I
They're
see.
being milked
Right,
for
yeah.
their thing.
The Marvel comic has some explaining to do.
That's
Yeah, I'm quite looking forward to the Marvel comic. I'm hoping it.
that makes me
With
remember that scene with Robert De Niro. You can milk anything.
a cat.
Well,
What
that's
is that? What it is? It's yeah.
We have
that's
Joan.
also a reference to Cold
Parents.
Forge, so
It is.
Facehuggers will
It is.
milk there. So
That moment, that seeing the vial was a little bit. Well, the shape of the
yeah,
urn
that's
was a
silly.
bit much. I want to know. I really want to know more about how all that sort of worked, but it's also kind of vague enough where it's like you don't really need to know. And them having, I mean, that was a problem with Covenant. Is removing this alienness from the aliens, and I think Romulus kind of puts it back in there because then it becomes a question of the link between the black goo and the alien, and this has been a
Right.
fan theory for a long time. I say a long time since sort of Covenant, really, isn't it? Does the black goo come from the aliens, or did the alien come from the black goo? What's the chicken? What's the egg? Is the black goo always going to result in something alien-like because it originally come from the aliens, and did the engineer steal it bioengineer their black goo from the aliens. Is the black goo different to Plagiaria spray? It opens up a lot of speculation and theory, and I think it returns. I think the black goo itself, the Plagarians itself, is capable of restoring some of that cosmic ancient Lovecraftian horror just as a concept itself. So that was one of the things where I was really very appreciative of the law reconciliation that was going off in Romulus. I feel like it really did bring that mystery back to it.
Agreed. I like that it put more in the air that question, chicken or egg, because we know in Covenant what Ridley Scott was aiming for. Thankfully, the novelization immediately and then other expanded media tried to distance that, but that's all expanded universe. So we have a film finally that goes with another probable possibility. Fede has also in interviews been hinting that maybe it is actually from the alien. We'll need to definitely ask that. But yeah, I'm glad that we have more open possibilities with the origins of the Black Goo and having it be more tied to the grandeur of our beautiful alien. A funny side tangent though, what were all of your guys' reaction to the Rat Smasher when when that scene?
Yeah.
I'm like,
the
okay,
gravity
so
plates.
it's bringing something like it's like Five Field Zombie, right? But like bringing something back from being flattened. I'm like, and that was another thing I had talked
Was
to
it
you.
flattened?
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
completely pasted flat.
I'm-
Oh,
Not so
I
funny.
didn't clock that.
I'm pretty sure that might have come from, if you remember in the aftermath of Covenant, Ridley Scott says, "Oh yeah, that alien, it comes out the ship and it's heading towards the planet's surface." He said, "Although that alien's
It'll
not dead."
regrow.
and then
he
we all
was
rolled our eyes.
yeah, but he was involved in this film, so I wouldn't be surprised if it's come from him or Fede heard that and he used it in the script. But I'm pretty sure it comes from that quote of Ridley Scott's. Looked a bit silly, but I guess it is what it is. Thing is, it's when I saw it, it brought back to mind those old Warner Bros. Cartoons of a character getting flattened by an anvil and then go and they blow themselves back up.
Yeah.
That one that got crushed by the APC. I mean, technically, it's just going and it's coming back to.
Yes. I mean, it was to me a bit hilarious because before Rook was talking about how humans are not designed for space travel, all those diseases and the pressures of space, and then we get the scene for a rat being flattened, and I'm like, yeah, nobody's designed to be flattened. I don't know how that's analogous to space.
No.
I liked it. It was fun. It was
It-
funny in that sense. But
It
what do you think of
was.
the creature that was spawned from it?
It was very Weyland-Yutani. Like when we get the alien cocoon, I was expecting something a bit more advanced than literally nailing hooks into the thing and raising it on chains. I thought it was a little bit medieval, which vibes with Alien 3, but I was expecting something a bit more advanced. So having
Well,
this
we don't
kind of
really
potato
see.
smasher on a rat, yeah, it made it very Resident Evil-ish
Well,
again.
It's not like we really see anti-grav in, well, other than I guess the fucking anti.
Well, you do because it's spaceships.
Grav
They
in the
got their own
film.
gravity.
I know,
yeah.
but you don't really think about that though, do you? It's not like any of the others have gone around with an anti-grav sled or some form or some
No,
fucking
but what about this
portal
film?
gun.
This film revolves
Yeah,
around several key scenes of zero gravity, and I mean, it's in the film itself. So.
I think the primitive vibe of it is very much in keeping of the tone of the opening. I think it's very tonally correct.
Oh no, I love the opening. And actually, someone in the comments said it's their favorite part. I would say, yeah, possibly the opening to this film is my favorite part of the film. I loved how it was shot and all that. But yeah, there's a lot of weirdly antiquated stuff in some of the way that Weyland Yutani is depicted here. And
Got
the
to cut those costs.
yeah, but the potato masher is definitely one that, like,
I really
who
didn't
was
clock
it
the
in
potato
the
masher.
yeah, who was it in the lab
It's
who
fine, I
says,
love it.
you know what this experiment needs? Who was that? And somebody had to sign off on that. Like, we had Alex White in here, and I said to them, you know, I could see a parody. If you did a book in the style of The Office, it would work. And it made me think, this feels like it's how like a Michael Scott has written this experiment. But yeah,
Oh, it's
they're
not that
very,
bad. It's not that bad.
Yeah, I
it's
didn't
odd.
find that part bad. I can completely imagine that happening, but that was I wasn't expecting, like, hearing Rook talk about this. Just the dark setting of 2142, and then seeing that, I don't know, I found it, it kind of lightened the
And
mood. I
that
was happy to see that.
poor little lab rat, it's gone through all those experiments thinking, I'm free. Smash! And that's what you get. But it came back to life. And then it
Yeah, what did
became
you
a
think about the
spider.
design?
I
Yeah.
guess Phil Tippett was brought in to do the stop motion of
Yes.
the reanimated rat, which was
Yeah.
cool. It was another legend of practical effects. I know I had brought this up to you before, Aaron, because I'm like, well, why is Andy giving her the vial of black goo? And you're like, well, he didn't see the rest of the video, but right next to that monitor was the tank with a big mutant rat corpse out of it. So it's like, you'd think with his observational skills he would have noticed that bit, but
Not just that, but the video was playing of it without being commanded. It was just on a loop. And
I guess Tyler missed that bit when he was on that side of the lab.
Rook was probably playing that for comedic relief or whatever, but I honestly, I liked the design of the big rat mutant.
Yeah, me
thing.
too.
It was very hyped up. It was very like, oh god, if we're gonna get more mutants in the future, I want it to be that side of biomechanical, hyped up ribbed structures.
Proper horrific.
Yeah, horrific deformation. I was seeing
body
that. I was
horror.
like, ooh, I wish
Yeah.
that Fire Team Elite Pathogen DLC was that type, and in
Yeah.
Prometheus and Covenant more of that type of viscerality with the mutations. So I loved it. Did anybody else notice? If you have an Expanse nerdy kind of side to you, when Navarro was taking in the cryo tubes, how when he was ejected, how she tried to match the speed completely, exactly, so
Yeah.
that
So
it
with the
would
pulse in the
shine.
engine to. Yeah.
Yeah, that attention to detail, seeing those little tiny tidbits elevated, literally was getting points after points, even though the other things were sometimes maybe silly or a bit strange. Seeing when the detail was at that level thought out in some of those other scenes, just beautiful to see that. That's something we've seen in Aliens, and less care for those things were put in the later films. But seeing such love for the universe, for just what would you do in space? I love that attention to detail.
What predictions did we get right? Because I remember as soon as we saw those temperature readings and they facehuggers were getting unfrozen ice, I was like, I called that when we did the podcast about. I called it. I said maybe that could be a sign that they're unfreezing, and so it turned out to be. Can we remember any other predictions we got correct? Or
I really can't
it was
remember
just me.
anything.
Okay.
I really enjoyed that scene, by the way. The facehugger scene. The shot of the facehugger crawling over the static Andy before jumping on Tyler, I was like, that is fucking creepy. I love it.
Also,
Yeah,
apparent proof that they're not going after synthetics.
Mm-hmm. True.
Yeah, so we have that confirmed in a film, but we've kind
well,
of.
you do have the scene with Andy in the blue light, and I was confused about why he was seizing there. And Aaron, you're like, well, the Xenomorph knocked him over. But it wasn't just me, because IGN did a video of the top 10 questions we have on Romulus, and they were like, why is
People
he
need
seizing
to
at that
watch
moment?
the fucking film. Jesus Christ. I thought it was fucking obvious. You see him get sent flying by the alien.
Yeah, it's fragile in that sense. So I get it. Another hit.
And the film very clearly demonstrates his as much as he's being repaired, but we are shown multiple times impacts. In particular, you know, when he's being beaten up by the kids, when he hits the wall after Bjorn fries him. I think those maybe 3 times he freezes as well.
He gets physically attacked by the hybrid in the end, but I don't think he got attacked by the Xenomorph that was standing over him.
It's the tail. No, he didn't. He's
the tail.
It's the tail when it goes after it sticks Archie.
Oh, okay. I must have missed that.
Tyler in the back.
With yeah. I must have missed that bit.
He's literally hit by Tyler's body flinging the tail. So strong tail.
Watch the film, Adam. Watch the film. I really like the cast in this. I know we don't get like a lot of background on the characters, but we don't get a lot of background on the characters in Alien or Aliens or Alien 3. You know, that's not necessary to really enjoy the characters. But like the cast, I thought were fantastic. Everybody really played the part well, and what we do learn about the characters, I very much enjoyed. You know, the whole plight, the whole setup of this being a desperate attempt to escape this desperate life that they were born into. I was like, yeah, that is another one of those relevant things like Naru from Prey. You know, this desire to prove herself in Prey. And I think this thing of being born into, might be antiquated to say your class, but you know, we aren't, you know, we're born into lives we don't choose. And in some regards that means, yes, we might fall into family careers. You know, we fall into situations that we don't necessarily want or aim for. You know, I'm somehow in a career I purposefully avoided. Go fucking figure. I found that very resonant, perhaps not in the desperation that they are showing in the film, but it's a bit of a, you know, it is a Fede thing. It is kids breaking into something, but this is you know, an altruistic take on that concept. They're going in there to out of desperation, stealing from somebody evil, you know, and Don't Breathe ends up being stealing from somebody evil in as well. But it's very over, obviously, that Weyland-Yutani is bad guys, and it just worked on so many levels for me. And I easily felt the relationships, the dynamics. The guy who played Bjorn, I can't remember his name. I'm sorry. Somebody look it up quickly. He did a fucking perfect job of being like that asshole that you kind of like, but you also tolerate.
Spike Fern,
thank you. And I think he did a phenomenal job playing the arsehole in the film. I really do.
He was fantastic.
But he's not.
That's quite the accolade.
He is. I don't think he was obnoxious.
Aliens.
Yeah,
they were realistic in the sense it's not like it's not the type of drama, as you said, Eric, in Alien 3, where you have different types of characters there, but the characters that are in here, they're I believe them. I connected in the sense
they're realistic.
I can feel that they're realistic, and I haven't connected to casts like that for a long time in the Alien.
Even down to Tyler in the scene with the gun, you know, where he's showing Rain what to do, and she's like,
magazines.
Yeah, guns and magazines. I was like, you know what? That is so fucking on point, because, you know, we have all these armchair. I mean, we're armchair fucking quarterbacks, aren't we? Sat on the internet talking about shit that, you know, we're not making films, you know, and you have all these sort of gamer and I suppose in my circumstance, you know, airsoft pricks that think we know a bunch of shit about, you know, real guns. And I was like, I see myself in him right there. How do you know about these guns? Oh, I've got the replica, and I've read up on the real steel thing. You know, that was so like that is me. That is so many of us people on the internet.
That was a fun moment for sure.
And Bjorn
And
going, "What's with all this military shit?"
yes,
Calling
yes,
him out.
It looks
that
cool.
It's funny. It
I
feels
thought that
nice.
was brilliant. Everybody is just so relatable. Sarah says in the comments, they weren't OTT caricatures, and that is, yeah, they weren't. They weren't parody characters. They weren't. I Fede kind of justified them as being, he wanted younger cast to make some more questionable choices because what is it? Your brain doesn't really stop developing until you
25,
28. Yeah,
25.
20. So I don't feel like any of them were necessarily stupid. The whole thing with Kay ejecting herself with the Z, that is built up. You see, I mean, I think Adam missed it because apparently Adam misses stuff in the film. But like, can I just say somebody on Facebook? Hang on, I've got to call him out now because I forgot his full name, and I'm fucking shit with names. What was it? What was
Okay,
his
that
name?
is out of desperation. I mean, hers was only the questionable decision, but it's completely out of desperation.
Matt Liebman. At one point, he said he enjoyed in the podcast how much we ribbed the shit out of each other. So, when I'm giving Adam fucking jibes, it's all in love, and
Oh, I
people
see.
appreciate it. But what was I saying? Yeah. So before she injects herself, you see her hold her stomach. She's like thinking of the baby. It's telegraphed quite
That she
obviously
might
there.
lose it, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't feel like these were Prometheus scientists or
Nowhere near.
to some
Yeah,
extent the Covenant crew. They
that's
were
a fair point.
realistic people making realistic choices.
Except for one point, they were plausibly misled. Except for that one point, I felt was a little bit
Go
where
on.
Kay had just been snatched, and was it Tyler? He was like, "No, I can't. I'll open the door again. I've got to go after her." I think, no, you wouldn't say that. You would
Well,
watch
no,
her
that
go,
that that
and
is his sister. That is a perfectly
I
emotional
know, but he
response
knows
to
there's
seeing.
nothing he can do.
Oh, does he though? Because
That's just grief. That's just
they're
grief.
begging.
To me.
Yeah, it's immediate grief. And remember, Rook tells Andy, these guys' emotion is going to get in the way of them being smart. You
Yeah,
need to
no,
be.
I can believe it as the character. That's what I'm saying. It's believable that they. It's just like that. That's the only moment where it feels like someone's being irrational. But what I was going to say is,
The
you get
second.
that. You get that in Aliens. Like Vasquez has to be taken by the shoulder and say, "Oh no, Vasquez takes Hudson." I think he says, "Forget it, they're dead."
Oh
Sort
no,
of thing.
Hudson's shaking. Hicks is
Vasquez.
shaking Vasquez. Yeah,
Right,
forget it,
yeah.
he's gone.
So you get that in Aliens. It's just sometimes characters can be irrational, but it's believably
It's
irrational. But it
logic.
still
It's
will,
logic,
yeah, it will
believably
still
irrational. Yeah.
evoke a moment, but not as hard as some of the stuff in Prometheus. You don't get that.
Well, that's
Pantheon.
a whole other kettle of fish. But like the scene where he's breaking down on Andy as well, where Tyler's.
Yeah.
I was like, Jesus Christ, yes. I fucking loved him. I really liked Archie Renault,
Yeah,
and I
he
really
was
liked Tyler.
he was great. The whole cast was great. I thought Eileen Wu as Navarro I think this was her first major
Yeah,
film
film.
role,
Was it?
and she was the chest bursted character. That you got to put on a performance for that, and she certainly did. And I love in that bit how it's not your typical chest burster, just like chest explosion. It actually like cracks open her chest, and it has to push its way out. It felt a little different in that way.
I love the arms on the chest burster. I love seeing them back. Although I do
Yeah.
think the head was a little weird. I'm not gonna lie.
I
It-
mean,
Or the lip
it was a bit
area was a little strange.
The thing was a bit stiff, and we were expecting blood-covered chest burster. It's relatively clean and gets through the little side of the chest rib crack. That
But
was
then
kind
again,
of weird to me.
it shows it coming out the sheath, the skin layer, so
yeah.
the blood's on that. I actually quite like this thing of the films using sheath, a covering, or whatever. I mean, you see it more in. I think it's introduced really in Resurrection, and it sort of carries through in some of the other films. You see it in Covenant, where the serpentine shape is this sheath, this translucent skin sheath before it does the whole marionette thing. But I I don't think I'm that keen on the chestburster sequence in this film. There's bits to it I very much like. I like the whole "Don't Let Me Die" thing. Kay and
Yeah.
Isabel Merced's scream is just fucking top notch in
Mhm.
the film. I love that. I thought that was a great sound design moment as well. Um, but yeah, I don't think I was terribly keen on it. I didn't really like the prosthetic. It looked strange.
I I mean, it worked for me. Sarah in the chat asks, "What did we think of the X-ray machine in the context of the film?" Yeah, I mean, that was an interesting
Love it.
twist on the chest burster sequence. We did see something similar in AVP with from Scar's perspective,
Division.
but this was unique enough. It did feel like something that was meant as a money shot for the trailer,
Yeah.
but it did look really cool. You couldn't deny that. It added an extra bit of flair to that whole
I hope to
sequence.
see that show up again in the RPGs at some point.
I
Some GMs
I
are going to make use of it.
I thought it had plot use beyond what we saw of it. They could have kind of used it in other ways, I think, and it was a shame that's all it was used for. That's all I'll say. I think I could see other uses for it. It's shame it wasn't expanded on.
Before we run off again, Sarah's made some other comments in here. It made sense to me that they want to get. Wait, no, that's not the post I was thinking. Oh, I thought she'd said something about the sun. I really, really liked the scenes of um, them talking about Kay talking to Rain about I want my child to see the sun, which it gets to see the sun. But then we move to this shot of Navarro outside the EEV, just basking in this sunlight coming through the window,
It's
and
like
it's
out of
moments
focus.
like that where you like it really nails down why they're doing what they're doing and how much it means to them. The whole shot of Rain finally seeing the sun for the first time, and the music at that point that's more melodic than it normally is. At that point, we get a bit of this hopefulness and epicness. Not epicness, that's the wrong word. It's hopeful, a little bit hopeful, but it's not this blasting optimistic piece. But yeah, I really felt for the moments like that. I thought they were great. And Sarah says here, prior to the film, I was worried I'd get Echo type teen angst, and was really glad there was none of that.
No,
Um,
this felt like people in their early 20s, right at that point where they're like, "Well, what are we going to do here with our lives?" And we
yeah,
have this path that's laid before us, and we don't want to go down it because we've seen what happens with our parents. So it was very relatable in that sense. Um, I did want to talk a bit more about that opening sequence with the colony. I thought visually spectacular. It was so cool to see that main town thoroughfare with the looming atmosphere processor and the rain and the darkness. Like that felt straight out of Aliens, and to see more of that colony life was really cool. But there's a specific issue of mine that we talked a bit about on our stream the other day, and that's when Alien pushes into too dystopian and too bleak. It can feel too much like Blade Runner or Cyberpunk, where it's kind of becoming a little caricaturish. Now, granted, some colonies I'm sure are harsher than others, right? Um, I'm sure Hadley's Hope was rough. It didn't look this rough, and you didn't get the sense that the people on the colony ship in Covenant thought they had this kind of a life in store for them.
well, they'd be
So
long dead by the time that happened.
right, but I mean, when and that goes to like the time of space travel and stuff like that. You're wondering exactly those kind of details as a fan, but it's like so they just arbitrarily raise their hours like that, and they have a canary in a coal mine. Like that feels just a little bit. I'm like, really?
But
I
I'd
mean, I
forgotten
get it.
about the canary. You're right. That was weirdly
it shows
antiquated.
it shows the cost cutting that probably goes off at these things. Some of the other law makes a use of it, like Inferno's Fall. There's a point in there of the cost cutting that goes off with them not
Yeah,
properly having
and
the sensors.
I thought Inferno's Fall it was a little pushing it to dystopian there.
Right. I
I
will
have the
never
same worry
ever
about the TV
agree with
series
you
as
about
well.
this.
Listen, Alien has a lot of commentary on capitalism and corporatism, and Weyland Yutani is obviously an evil company that can make people disappear. And yeah, that's the whole, like, I'm not trying to say, oh, Weyland Yutani should be portrayed as more noble or
Adam
whatever.
thinks the
But
Alien
at the end
universe
of
is
the day,
hopeful.
they still have a front to present to the public as a company, you know?
I
And
think
so,
they're past the point of caring. I genuinely think we're at this point where they don't care.
I
Everybody
didn't
knows.
have a problem with the, pushing hours up without the employee knowing it. I had a bit of a problem with, like, my first thought was they're still using humans. Why haven't they got droids? Like,
Cheaper
it would,
than androids. That is
no,
something we also
droids
see
would
a
be
lot.
cheaper than humans. They wouldn't have
That's
wages or living costs. That's what you would use.
that
yeah,
is
androids are
well,
expensive too. So
Not
that is
Android,
so
like
that is
special machines.
that is something we see a lot in the expanded media as well. You know, the cost of a human life is less, than the cost of these specialized machines. They care more about the machines than they do about the humans, and that is an ongoing theme of the Alien series, especially in the expanded universe. And this is where I've seen people
not in Thaw.
compare. What?
Not in Thaw. Remember?
Yeah,
The
yeah. In
recent
Thor,
Marvel
there,
comic?
there were the synthetic workers in the mine.
Yeah.
But again, it's a different timeline in the sense it's like so many decades in the future.
Oh no,
Maybe
yeah,
they're
sorry, I'm
getting
with you.
a bit more cheap as they go. They're finally getting maybe to the point in 2180, whatever, that it's becoming more logical to replace a sense of people. For a long time, maybe it doesn't make sense for most of the situations. And when people are born in a place where they have no other way to get out, you can set the wages what you want.
Yeah. And
So-
I thought that was more about the opportunity that presented itself. I think that was a bald-faced lie. I thought that was a question of where are your parents, where are your guardians, where are your people that can look after you? Oh, you don't have any. Well, in
We'll
that
just up your
case,
hours. Yeah. I
we
mean, I don't feel like it crossed that line. It was just kind of pushing it for me. But again, that makes sense in the universe. Some colonies are going to be rougher and more poorly run than others. So I could kind of justify it. It's just a thing I've seen a lot lately in like alien expanded media that I'm like, let's not make it Blade Runner levels of dystopian, because Alien has strength, I think, in the commentary being more subtle, because in some ways that's even more insidious.
I agree, Adam, about that. The subtlety is always nice to see, and that I personally would want more of that subtle type of maleficence that you see with corporations. And that, yeah, this is maybe on the line, and I don't want it to cross anymore. But I can give you an analogy with real world showings. For instance, you can name any of the huge companies today in the developed world. They'll be trying to present a very friendly, very correct type of presence, yet a lot of them have a lot of delegates and workers in the third world countries where
just pull blatantly evil shit like that. So yeah,
well,
I can
it's like the
justify it by-
Primark sweatshops and stuff like that, isn't
Yeah.
it? You know, I bet like all the jewelers. I can't imagine the diamond mines and stuff like that
So
are exactly
it
pleasant
makes
places.
sense. Maybe Weyland Yutani's like, people don't care about this planet. This is far away, so we can just do whatever.
I think
So-
people don't really consider the scope of the galaxy when they think about things like that.
Mhm.
people on Earth have no idea and care very little probably for what's happening on 20 parsec
Yeah.
distance.
I
Sorry,
always
go
bring up like the communication issues I've come across working in a global service company, and then I think of the scale of, you know, a galactic company, and I'm like, yeah, this isn't unrealistic to me. I can completely believe there's colonies out there with some governor, for lack of a better word, you know, skimming specific things to make their life better because they are their own king of their own little hill, and nobody cares what they're doing as long as a quota is being met or something like that.
It was, I mean, visually, it was a really interesting setting, and I honestly wish we would have seen a bit more of the mining colony. I know that wasn't the focus of the story, but
Yes.
it made me think of that one 40th anniversary short where you see them go down into the mines and stuff. And
Oh yeah, that was a good shot. That was a
yeah,
good shot.
so and I guess Tyler wasn't doing too bad. He inherited his father's spaceship, and he had his own little house where they could hang out. So it wasn't that bleak
Well,
for
it
him.
was a trailer, wasn't it? It wasn't a house as such.
Yeah, little mobile unit or whatever.
Casper says in the chat, "Do we know if Jackson's star is in the Zeta Reticuli system?"
I don't.
But then
We
also,
have some information about it. The Jackson star is said to be 65 light years away, which is almost at the 20 parsec limit, which is something that it is in the RPG. I don't know if it has been previously referenced somewhere, but Zeta Reticuli is like 12 or 13 parsecs, so they're definitely not near each other. We don't know if they're in
Casper's
the same direction.
Casper says in the chat as well, the Ptolemon system is 65 light years from Earth, same as Jackson's star. And Fede suggested that perhaps it might be Thetis, or
Mm,
in that sort of region, which could have been interesting. Could have also explained like why there'd be an Ash kind of model thing nearby,
yeah.
if that's where Ash got on the Nostromo.
I would have liked to have learned a bit more, like why exactly they wanted to go to Yavaga. Because I'm like, that's 9 light years away in this little
It's an
cargo ship.
independent star system.
There's
They've
got to be
lived
a
there
closer independent system with a
No,
sun. Like,
but
evidently.
Bjorn said this. That is the it was a throwaway line, but he said, "What are we going when the cryo was not enough in the first place?" They said, "What are we gonna do now? Ivago is the closest star system."
really? Oh, okay.
Yes, and the 9 years. Yeah, it's strange when we look at how quickly the travel goes uh, in the other movies. But one thing that is never mentioned is, does this ship have FTL? Maybe they're going sub FTL. Maybe it's a very close
Yeah, and that's
system, and
why they
when
need the cryopods because the ship's not
yeah.
designed to make that long of a trip. Like I did that as well. Like, and time distance as an alien have always been kind of contradictory with each other. Um, but yeah, it did. It did. I think in the script you were reading from the other day too, Aaron. I'll have to revisit it, but I think Rain does say she has family at that planet or something. Maybe.
I don't remember. I only sort of read the first 4 pages
Okay.
while we're
I'll
on the
have to look
stream.
at that again.
But that was an early draft when the film was known as Renaissance, I believe.
What do we guys think about generally the effects, not just the creature, but so the physical props and the
Oh,
CGI that's
the
not mentioned enough with the station and the
yeah.
creature effects all combined. What do you
The
guys generally
production
think?
design, absolutely incredible. I love the ships in this movie. We only really get a couple, the little cargo hauler, the Corbellin, Corbellon,
Corbellin,
Corbellin, um, as well as the little self-piloted
Echo Probe.
probe in the beginning that picks up the fossilized asteroid. I just want to give a shout out to the designer of those ships, a concept artist we've been chatting with recently, Matt Savage. So
Who we'll
fantastic.
definitely be having on the show at some point.
Yeah, so fantastic work with that. Another concept artist, friend of mine, Adam Milicevic, who did some apparel designs for us. I don't know if I can say exactly what he did in this movie yet, but he designed a core part of something we see in the movie. So hoping to be able to have him on as well.
Can I just say how much I love? I'm assuming they did it for all of the spaceship components. So I'm assuming they did it for Renaissance as well as the probe and as well as Corbellin. But how good did they look on the screen? This idea of building a physical model, then scanning it in CG. But it just looked so authentic. The greebles, the little details that you can only really get from kit bashing. It just looked so genuine. I
Yeah.
loved seeing the exterior shots of everything in space. And to be fair, I've never really been a huge fan of ships in the Alien franchise. When I'm watching them, I'm not marveling at the Nostromo or the
Oh, I have been.
Sulaco. It's not one of the aspects of the Alien franchise I'm enamored by, apart from the derelict. But I really, really found it thrilling seeing those exterior shots on IMAX, especially. I really need to go and see this in IMAX before it's out again Oh,
Yeah.
was it gets kicked out at the end of the week, I think?
By the Crow, yeah. Hopefully it goes back in because I think we saw that with Dune Part 2. It went back to IMAX. But yeah, that scene where they ascend out of the planet's atmosphere in the ship, it was almost like an interesting reversal of Alien, where they have the harsh landing down onto the surface. This is kind of the reverse of that. Um, but it was such a cool sequence. And yeah, everything to do with the space station, the planet vistas, space was so well done. Even the station eventually crashing on the rings of the planet was such a cool visual.
Shall we start to talk the end and sort of wrap up then? This review. I think we went about as long as I expected us to go.
About
To be
3 hours, yeah. I'd
yeah,
have to go back and see how long we did with Covenant, but I would imagine
it
right
was
around.
about 3 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, fuck it.
Just final point between before we go to that third, fourth act. What we're expecting. I just want to emphasize for the effects, my opinion, that both most of the practical and most of the CG stuff is really, really well done. It's the people complain about the details that they don't like, but good effects are what you don't notice. If you don't notice it, that means it's good. And the things that help, for instance, CG environments and CG creatures work is often by having that physical prop there, because it's a lot easier for them to do realistic lighting, etc., than a tennis ball, what Fetty says. So I'm really happy to see that combination. A lot of the interviews and Fetty himself and everybody have been talking about the practical effects that are, for the most part, really well done. But I think that we should also emphasize the huge amount of work that the effects crew have done for the CG enhancements of
Yeah,
all of. Well, there's a lot of CG as well
yeah.
in the film, but it's beautifully married with the practical effects
Yeah.
for most
The
of them.
the CG facehuggers looked fantastic. You
Beautiful,
know,
yeah.
I think there was a few dodgy moments of the practical facehuggers. Like there's
Yeah,
one
the
that's
remote
clearly the remote
control.
control. It's when I think it's in there's a similar moment in the cryo chamber sequence where the facehuggers running along the top and you sort of move down with it. Where it's the front legs not doing anything, and
Yeah,
it was the same of that practical remote controlled thing in the corridor sequence. The legs are just static and it looks wrong. Like
yeah.
the other stuff
Some
looks like it's moving. The legs look like the side legs look fine, look like they're moving, but it's these front ones, they're just there, just static, sticking up. It's like there should have been a little bit of movement going there as well.
Yeah, some of the practical ones needed to either be enhanced with the CGI or the shots just not included. But a lot of the combination of when we're using the practical and when we're seeing the CGI, was really mended really well. Especially I love, yeah, with the facehuggers when they're running around, but also with the alien adults. There was so many flipping between CGI and the mostly practical, and it really, really looks well together. I'm really happy how that
Yeah.
turns out.
Some of my favorite films really marry practical effects and CG very effectively. Like movies like Deep Blue Sea, Jurassic Park 3, where you'll have CG and practical effects in the same shot and it just plays together so well. And this movie
Starship
does
Troopers
that. Starship Troopers as well is a great example.
from 1997. That film still fucking holds up today.
Yeah. And even
How the fuck that looks this good 30 nearly 30 odd years ago is
yeah.
outrageous to me.
And even Alien Resurrection AvP, seeing those full body CG aliens and seeing a lot of the good practical stuff together is what's really effective. I love seeing the CG aliens
Yeah.
in this movie too. So I do feel like, yeah, there's been a lot of emphasis on the practical effects in this movie, but we also should like appreciate all the hard work that the VFX artists did in this film, because the CG looks phenomenal. If I'm not counting the deepfake stuff, it looks phenomenal all around.
And the deep fake technology just isn't there, and it's the technology itself. It's better, but morally speaking, do we really want it to get too good? Is also the other thing. But it's certainly advanced past Luke Skywalker at the end of Mandalorian and Leia and Rogue One and Tarkin and stuff like that. It's getting there. It's just not there.
some people in the casual audience didn't even notice that there was a deepfake. They were focused on the puppet body with the entrail organs and everything for the
Oh, you know
synthetic.
what?
So yeah,
Just speaking of that puppet as well, I loved his hand. The sort of feeling of his belly and the movements of his hand. I was like, oh, I like that. That's showing some dexterity. That doesn't feel too robotic.
very expressive. Yeah.
Just a small little moment that I caught. Anyway, okay, so let's start to wind us down and probably spend another 20 minutes talking about probably the other really controversial aspect of the film. You either love it or you either hate it, I think is basically the way it's come down, and that is the Offspring. Who wants to start us off on this?
The alien. Some people before they saw the credits, they were thinking of how will, what will be the official name. So baby alien, and some people were already typing the alien, which is a bit hilarious. But
I've heard Slengineer, which is my favorite.
engineer.
I like that.
Slengineer.
But I will say, out of I knew the spoilers in the sense that there's going to be some kind of hybrid thing. What I was imagining was nothing like this. And being surprised to see that the first time, with I and the audience and probably today, that they weren't trying to hide it. With the pregnancy, what's gonna happen? Yeah, that was very clearly telegraphed. But we were all curious. What's it gonna look like? What's it gonna look like? What's gonna happen? Is it gonna burst through the belly or something? I'm gonna have an AVPR situation, or is it gonna go the other way? So yeah, that scene was one of the only maybe true instances of the gore that got a few people flabbergasted a bit, and it was nice seeing at least some of the viscerality. Just since such blood loss, yeah, you feel for kill, like, oh my god. But then that seeing the baby face, I was like, okay, what are they gonna do with it? And it being encased in this egg-like thing, that's a very interesting creative design. So we have literally a baby in the egg. Oh my god, I just realized that has connotations with 2001 Space Odyssey.
Can I
Alien.
just say, as soon as, because there's that very brief glimpse, for a moment, I swear to God, I thought, oh no, it's a baby Ash. I was convinced it was Ash trying to become
What?
human. I thought, no, and it wasn't.
I think
for
you're the
a
only person that
moment,
might have
yeah,
thought that.
yeah, I'm
Yeah.
so glad they didn't do that.
Yeah, that didn't cross my mind. Oh my god, that would be a horrible thought. But yeah, seeing it, a pale baby thing in an alien egg, it was disturbing. And yeah, the first kudos to Rain. Rain was really trying to be of use and do something. I mean, I understand people would, panic and freeze in such a situation. She was like, get it out. And then, yeah, I get the acid and then falling through. And she crawled there just to see that husk filled with the acid. I was like, okay. Was it dissolved? What's it gonna look like? And yeah, the growth is ridiculously fast. I do wish that was slower. The same with the facehugger to chest burster scenes. I don't think they're so weak as they are rushed. You don't have time to breathe and linger on some of the shots, and I think that's even more of the problem than the speedy life cycle.
I think that is indicative of a lot of the pacing of a lot of films in modern cinema. You don't get time to breathe. It's bam, bam, bam. There's no peaks and troughs, I suppose, in the roller coaster these days.
So you're
Yeah,
saying
I
this
wanted that
director made something where you don't breathe.
Oh, but
Yeah.
tish.
But then when we see that thing fully grown, and that first revealing shot, no jump scare, no music, no sound, no nothing.
God.
I was like, what the hell is that? Yeah,
That
I get the Slenderman connotations later, but the first instance, I was like,
it was
oh my
horrific.
god.
It was genuinely horrific.
It's not expecting that, and that engineer face, like, I immediately got like, okay, I understand where they're going with it, but seeing that the proportions, and then the back, this with the ribbed texture, and that the start of those dorsal tubes, just having those holes in its body, like, oh, disgusting. Uh, but also, it seems like maybe is it the acid that burnt that part of the skin, maybe? So that's why we see the under skeletal structure. It's interesting. I'm not completely sure about that, but just seeing that was absolutely horrible. And yeah, then Andy uh, trying to trying to defend Kay there, and just having it come up with no sound, and then just that quick movement solidified. Oh my god, this thing is dangerous. I believe it to be a much bigger threat than any time I had any interaction with the newborn, which was just silly melted cheese. I kept thinking, but this was like, this is some weird thing. And then when it walks with those weird proportions, I was like, what is this? Is it a puppet? Is it CGI enhanced? What is it? And then when it gets to Kay and what it does later to her, that was horrifying. And at least when you're gonna do a hybrid, I like it. Give it the tail. It had the tail. I was like, with that. It had a we. This is the first time we see the inner mouth that's fleshy and that's flexible. If we don't
Except for
count the resurrection.
resurrection.
Yeah. But that's normally that doesn't go straight, but it's normally snaky. So yeah, and then showing that Kay has been changing with the alien mother hormones and things. Uh, then the after reveal when Rain comes and seeing that creature turn around, and you see it just, it's a chin and neck and stomach and everything with that same black gooey liquid. And that was the fatty stuff that I was expecting, that I was wanting, in the
Yeah.
sense to see what could you do to disturb me. And that was not an aspect that I thought was going to go with a pregnant type of alien bursting. So having that added aspect, that's something new and unique and very gross, but nothing too illogical there. I liked how formidable it was. I like the scene then when Rain is just trying to figure out how to get rid of it. She was very generally competent throughout the whole movie and having smart decisions. I love that. So she's just trying to get rid of it, get rid of the cargo. And having that creature sneak around and just so silently go
The
behind her, I
silence
loved it.
was the silence was fantastic.
The little fault that I do give it is when she's thinking at the last second, oh, what to do, and before she remembers to kick that pod thing, the acid, and make a hole, the creature is there gloating for fucking ever. It's creepy. It looks nice. I would wish it
Rob,
was shorter, but it was so haunting. And that final jump scare with it,
yeah, that shit me up. That did.
yeah, I don't like hybrids in the sense I want Alien to steer away from hybrids. But if you're gonna do hybrids, uh, in the sense more human-like hybrids, this is some of the best you've got. People were lamenting that it wasn't a Gibson Alien 3 situation when they wanted
The
Kay
new
to
beast.
mutate and create, rip herself apart werewolf style and become an alien. That would have been also very, very cool. Maybe would have liked it more. But for the disturbing factor, and if you have to go with a human alien hybrid thing, I was surprised that I did not hate this, that I liked bits of it, and it a lot bigger impact than the newborn ever did for me.
Yeah. So Rob Harvey's also mentioned something I clocked, and I haven't seen really mentioned by people. Um, it hadn't occurred to me until earlier. This is Rob. Sorry, it hadn't occurred to me until earlier today that the art relief of the child breastfeeding at the start of the film was foreshadowing.
No.
I clocked that one quite in my second viewing.
In my second
As
as well, I was like, yeah, oof.
Adam, go on then, Mr. Prequel hater. How did you feel about the?
I mean, I can't deny the sequence was creepy and well shot. Like just the visuals of Rain at her most vulnerable, in her sleepwear, in that one shot where she's like creeping down the hallway with all the mist behind her and the flashing lights was so dramatic. And even just her going down into the cargo bay and having the remnants of whatever like material was being collected there, like black sand or whatever, like was such a cool looking visual. Again, it was just those fan nitpicks I have. Like, really, 2 minutes? 2 minutes? It's like a full grown adult at this point. Like the time it takes for her to climb down the ladder. And yeah, I wasn't a big fan of the design. It was too engineer looking for me, and this just comes from my personal expectation, right? I'm like, I would have liked just a big xenomorph here that got on the ship or something. Um, I was like, this movie could have gotten away with being completely divorced from the prequels, but it was still a very creepy, effective scene. I can't deny that. I love the cosmonaut looking spacesuit she had. That was really cool.
I think it looked like it could have been Colonial Marine space armor. Like the shape of the chest plate, the shoulder straps. I was like, that looks like the top of some Colonial Marine chest armor. That would work for me as some antiquated combat spacesuit.
Yeah. So the
I
suit,
really like the costume design there.
and I like the first person perspective of her climbing up that rope as it's heading towards the ring.
Isolation vibes is
Yeah,
there as
that's
well.
exactly what I was about to say. It felt very isolation. We get that cheap jump scare there, the thing's face right on the screen. But it was an intense final escape scene. I can't deny that, regardless of any other gripes I have. So I feel like it was an effective climax of the movie for sure. And then we have the scene where she tells Andy she'll find a way to fix him because again he's been incapacitated. He gets incapacitated a lot in this movie, um, and she puts him into cryo. She goes into cryo, and the ship goes off to Yavaga. So, with how well this movie's doing, I do wonder if it's the last we'll see of Rain Carradine.
Eric, how did you feel about
Well,
this young chap?
we've had in the two
Biggest of
prequels,
chaps.
we've had people saying we're going to get something really disturbing, and every time it's been something not. In this one, we had Isabel Merced, and she said, let me find the quote here. I've got to find the exact thing here because I want it to be right. There's a scene that I'm in, and they all had to turn away. Not one person stayed looking at that iPad because it was so disgusting. And I was watching it like this. I was so excited. And we've had Fede saying, it's always great when you can do something in a movie when you realize while shooting it, well, this has never been seen before in the history of humanity. I've dealt with that a few times in my movies, and it's always great to be shooting it. You look to the left and see the boom mic going, what's happening here? Now, according to Syntax, the guy I mentioned earlier on our forums, in the same part of his message, he talks about what he saw in an earlier version of the film. The hybrid that was shown in the final film also looked different to the one I saw. The human looking part was still there, but it looked more like Big Chap, but white and an elongated head, more like a xenomorph without its skin. Seems this scene was cut a bit to keep it more mysterious, but in an earlier cut, it was implied that it grows while consuming organisms. That would have been more interesting. Everything about this scene I was horrendously underwhelmed by, did nothing for me, felt like a cheap, tacky Resident Evil knockoff.
Boo.
I did not like it at all, and I genuinely think it would have been a better film if they had removed this. And that's my honest feelings. I didn't
You are
hate
not
it,
alone.
but
You're
I
not
just
alone in there.
felt, I know it's the Marmite scene, but I
It is.
genuinely felt this is not doing anything for me. It's not feeling disturbing. Okay. I just feel like this isn't Alien. This feels like something else, and I didn't want it.
So fair. One out of four
Yeah.
of us, I guess.
So you were saying
okay with that, but yeah,
someone
that's how I
posted
feel.
in our forum about a different version they
Yes.
saw?
Yes, I can
Okay.
link you directly if you want.
Okay. Yeah.
So
I'm curious about that.
I fucking loved this end. Don't get me wrong. In some regards, it's a little tiresome because it's part of that formulaic way that the Alien films began to go. So in that regards, it's like, ugh, another one. But this is the most disturbed and creeped out any of the Alien films have made me feel since I was a child. You know, not Romulus, I'm doing it again. Covenant had one moment where the alien was genuinely freaky, and it's literally seconds long. And that's the bit where it stands up tall in the terraforming bay as it's walking by. Yeah, as Greg has so wonderfully mimed there on the screen. I've gone on about how much I was bummed out by the premiere. You know, I came back. I didn't really see a lot of everything that was going on. I didn't understand stuff. And while I missed details of the end sequence, you know, I didn't understand how the fuck the end actually happened, how she got rid of it, and the whole jump scare stuff. But that fucking image was burned into my mind. We got back to that hotel, and my sleep was affected by this creature, and this has not happened to me for a goddamn long time. You know, I closed my eyes or I looked in the corner of the room and I saw that fucking face staring at me.
Was it sleep on
Wow.
your front time again?
No, thank God. It was not sleep on my front time. But that was when I knew that the offspring had got me. You know, when I saw it, when I closed my eyes, when I saw it in the darkness. That reveal of it in the corridor, that silence, that fucking thing was horrifying. I genuinely thought it was terrifying. And it's one of the standout moments of the franchise for me of recent years. I do this the whole end is Fede Unleashed. You know, it's the grotesque birth, the pod coming out, the spray of blood. My missus looked away. She's like, I can't fucking deal with this. It is Fede, but it's also too fast. You know, the birth should have been more drawn out. It should have been more agonizing. We should have had slower bits with that creature. You know, when that shot, that reveal of it is fantastic. But what I wanted to see, instead of this reverse of it, you know, looking at Andy and you see the form, I wanted to see it crawl out. I wanted the camera to linger on that monster and give us like this alien isolation-esque moment, you know, where you're mesmerized by the alien coming out of the vents and you can't look away. I wanted Fede to force me to look at that hideous thing come out that vent slowly, and there'd be nothing that I or the characters could do about it. So I do feel like the pacing here was a little bit off, a little bit too fast. But the entire setup, the entire creature, it was just, yeah, Jesus
But
fucking Christ.
biologically, why didn't Kay Fifield out? She should have been undergoing her own
Because it's
transformation,
not, remember,
and
she didn't
then.
inject black goo. This is a different substance that Rook has been
But the
engineering. It's
mother
not the same.
filters for the thing growing inside her. She should have been more affected by it. And then it should have been like in Species. It should have been her becoming whatever she becomes, and then this monster gives birth to another monster, like Lilith. Make it biblical. As it is, she just remained completely. Apparently, she was lactating something, but
She was lactating black goo of some variety. I thought that was
she
brilliant as
looked
well.
completely human. I think she should have
It's a
transformed.
different substance, different reaction. Every time we get the black goo, we seem to get a different thing, which used to
But
piss me
it should have
off.
affected. What I'm saying is, she ingested the same thing that the rat did. So it should
But
have
the
had
rat
the
wasn't
same
Well,
tiny.
effect.
and who's not to say it's been refined a little bit more since then? I mean,
And they said they
yes,
said not 25% DNA match, so different effects on on
I
different
mean,
creatures. But yeah, I would have liked K
don't
transformation
get
when
me wrong,
the rat
Eric.
was
What you're saying is a reasonable critique. If you want
Just
to
biologically,
if you want to
that's all.
dive into it, but I'm
Yeah.
sure you can explain it away regardless.
the baby
But
absorbed it. The baby just fully
yeah,
absorbed it.
it happened. I don't care how it
Okay.
happened, because I genuinely fucking love that. You know, that smile. And
Yes,
they're taking the fucking piss out of me on the boards for this, but I've always found the engineer in Prometheus, Ian White's engineer, creepy. You know, the black eyes, and there's an outtake of him smiling as the engineer, and I think the engineer is unsettling. He's creepy, but
I'm
this,
pretty sure they took it from that. They used that as
yeah,
inspiration
oh
because it
no,
was.
no doubt, and I'm
Yeah.
glad they did because it's been stuck in my mind. It's bothered me that much. Um, and again, talking to the pacing thing, I would have liked them to have lingered on the breastfeeding, you know, to emphasize the perversion of the mother son relation, mother child, sorry, relationship that was going off there, because I don't. Yes, it's clear, but it's not clear enough. I don't think you can infer. You can quite easily
Uh,
infer that the
I didn't
breastfeeding is
get
going
what it
off.
was doing in the first time I saw it. Yeah.
I'm not sure it would because it's so in shadow. I felt because her head was wrenched right over to one side. I felt it was doing a
Vampire in her.
vampire. Yeah,
Yeah.
it had it in her neck. You can't honestly tell because it's so much in shadow, and also her top is not torn or anything. So I think it's deliberately meant to be ambiguous. So also,
I
she's
they
clearly
would
shied
dead.
away from that moment to not go too much overboard, but
Yeah,
it's really, really implied what it's doing with
yeah,
that's
it's
yeah.
it's
the time is
implied. Yeah,
in down position.
it's
I
but she's
I would have
clearly been
liked more
drained of
overt.
fluids somehow, so it's
I,
leaching
I
her.
I would have just found it more disturbing if they had have made it a little bit more overt. But yeah, Jesus Christ, what was the name of the guy?
That actor, well, he's a basketball player as well. I mean, I don't know if he's an actor specifically at all, but that that person's performance, when I saw them, that's quite a unique anatomy and great casting choice
He's
there. But
he has some Robert Bobrovsky, a former Romanian college basketball player. If I remember rightly, he has like some form of mega scoliosis or something like that. And a lot of that is just it's him. It's a practical get up. And Jesus
beautiful
Christ, like
usage
the
performance.
shot of him towering over rain, you know, that's the fucking guy. I don't even think that's augmented.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it.
He is seven
Eric, you muted.
foot and 7 inches tall. Um,
He's
where is
huge.
it?
Another part of the design that also really creeped me out is that you see the back is crooked. You see like a malformed
Well,
type
he's
of
constantly
birth
growing
defect.
in front of our eyes.
Probably that, but literally the spine is very contorted, and I think that may be a bit augmented with the suit design, but it really is a disturbing type of suit.
Imagery, yeah.
Yeah, and in the tummy section, like I don't know, was it
Oh
from
god, the
that opening thing? I
I
don't know,
think
is
it
it
was
from the
supposed to
umbilical
be his
cord or
navel. Yeah, that was what I took from it. It
oh,
was navel.
oh god, yeah.
God, yeah. Ugh. Ugh. Okay, are we done?
Do we want to do scores?
Um, you're welcome to. I don't know if I can settle.
Are you going to
Like,
do a written review?
yes.
Okay. Well, we can save it then. I'll let you
No, I
mull
mean,
it over.
you guys can give scores if you want, if you've got them. It's one of those ones where I'm struggling. Like, I objectively know there are flaws within the film, things that I would like to change, but I still fucking really love it. I really enjoy it. And it's like I can never, from the original three, I can never pick a favorite. You know, I know 1 and 2 are objectively better and have a far bigger influence on cinema as a whole, but I still really fucking love 3, and I hold it in the same sort of preference as I do the first 2. And you know what? I think I might do the same with this. I think Romulus I hold in the same regard as the original trilogy.
So you're
Not
making a level of 4 films
Yeah,
that
it's just
yes,
A tier. It's just A tier, and that's where all of them are.
you're making a
Um,
shelf for your preferred A tiers.
it just feels like Alien is having a moment right now, and I don't think we got that feeling with Covenant.
No.
Um, so this is the most satisfied I've walked away from an Alien movie in a long time. I know I've nitpicked this movie to hell today, but I liked it. Like, it's a
Just
solid
like,
Alien movie.
just like.
I don't know if I love it. I don't know if I love it like I did Prey, unfortunately, but I'll take the liking it because I haven't felt that about an Alien movie in a long time.
Do you have a score?
I'm kind of at a 7.5, I think, for me personally. It did a lot of things really well. It was just some of the logic issues for me, and maybe this just comes again from what I wanted. Um, and some of the main effect being Rook that didn't hold up for me. Um, the timing stuff, like it was just a number of points against it that kind of racked up for me. A little too referential, a little too callbacky. So I'm kind of in between a 7.5 and an 8, and maybe I'll, because I liked it more in my second viewing. So maybe I'll
Mhm.
see it a few more times and see more things and be like,
I
oh,
think
okay.
it might be one of those same things as any, where I know people tend to look. What's the fucking phenomenon where you reevaluate things based on other things? I don't think that's really what goes on so much as it is your expectations are set when you revisit older things. You already know what the stuff is, so the things that you're gonna be bothered by, if you already know they're there, you've already come to accept them, you've already come up with your own theories, they don't bother you as much, and you just enjoy the ride more. I think that's more of a thing.
So you're saying you're really into the Predator now?
to be to, to be fair, that's just genuine trash. That is just
You
genuine
see, but
trash.
that disproves your not everything or
True, not everything. Not
every
everything.
case by case.
Yeah, but this league's better for us at least. I
Greg,
personally, I can put it at an 8 out of 10, but yeah, numbers like this don't mean a lot. Maybe in reference, yeah, I liked it more the second time, and the first thing that I said, I, I really love it, despite the million little nitpicks. But the things that it does so well, that means so much to me.
hmm
That beginning, that world building, that actually characters that I don't fucking hate for once, uh, and a biomechanical alien that you actually see some interesting, good shots of. That means something. Uh, and there are other also good story elements, the how things are set up. I like it. A million little nitpicks that put it down, that have been said a million times. But if I were to rank it amongst the other films, oh, of course, Alien and Aliens are the top as well. I'm also a great lover of Alien 3, but I cannot say that to me it's as good as Alien Aliens. So there is a bit distance there to Alien 3. And on maybe a similar level, again, as a great Alien 3 enjoyer, uh, maybe I'd put Romulus there for completely different reasons. Alien 3 has other great strengths that maybe Romulus does not, yet Alien 3 has other problems that Romulus avoids. So maybe on just a general level of enjoyment, I think I'd put it maybe Romulus to that might really like the level of Alien 3 than Resurrection, which I also like, but it's farther down, and then the AvPs and prequels. I'm generally saying this as somebody who likes all of the movies except The Predator, but I've had levels of enjoyment, and I can see the good things even with a million nitpicks for every film. I do enjoy watching them, but yeah. So the prequels, the Resurrection, and the AvPs, they're one lower level there. Good things, but lower level. Then Romulus and Alien 3 upper, and of course Alien and Aliens. I was surprised that it even got there, so I'm happy with that. On a quick information about the general success of the movie, I'm very happy. It's doing well. Um, for inflation adjustment numbers for the box office, it's also doing well in that regard. It's at the same level of box office for inflation adjusted that Alien 3 was actually. The top film is the box office in domestic numbers over the first weekend was Prometheus, AvP
Yeah,
actually
AvP did very well.
very well, and then Alien Covenant. But when we compare those things, what we have to have in mind is the estimated budget. Alien Romulus is doing very well because if the estimated budget is 80 million, it's already made more than half in the US domestically over the first weekend, which rarely any other film has. I think, of course, Aliens has done that as well, but also only AvP. But that had a lot less of an audience and critical score. So there are multiple good things that seem to be going for it, and internationally it's making good numbers. So I hope
It's breaking records in China.
Yeah, I'm hoping this means we'll actually see more Alien development. So yeah,
I think Budapest has pretty good tax incentives as well.
Yes,
So it
yes.
probably is more profitable for them with that.
But that's why they take shit like that in mind. Aliens, and Alien 3 was filmed in the UK because of the massive tax incentives at the time. That is a consideration in their budgeting and in their filming. So yeah, of course. Eric, how about yourself? Final thoughts?
As an average cinema goer, I'd say I might have said 8, but that final scene drags it down to 7. As an Alien fan, might have been 7, but the final scene drags it down to 6. So, yeah.
Eric does.
I may be 6.5 on a good day, but yeah, it's that final scene lets it down for me. It does.
Okay. I am very thankful to see it doing so well. I just hope it has legs. Covenant had a record-breaking drop-off in its second weekend from terrible word of mouth. Everybody's been talking about how busy their screens are. And I really hope to see that good word of mouth continue. I hope to see the momentum continue. And I can't wait to learn more. I hope this is the start of a resurgence of stuff. We've already looked out on the Predator side with Dan. Trachtenberg now working on Badlands. They're filming that currently. There's a Prey 2 coming. Hopefully we'll get more Alien stuff. I'm happy to see Fede return. I just hope a sequel would, again, like I said, I think the references are a little overblown, but I would like to see it stand a bit more on its own 2 feet, and I'd like to see him unleashed a bit more.
Just have them co-direct AvP.
Yes, and then let's lead into an AvP, please. Finally, a theatrical, decent future AvP. But yeah, I'm thankful. I'm excited, and I'm so happy. I'm so excited by this. I genuinely didn't think I'd be able to hold the film in the same sort of enjoyment that I do the original 3, and I do, and I didn't expect that, and it's nice. It's refreshing as a fan. It's refreshing as a fan to feel such positivity, and I'm digging it.
It just feels like it's a great time to be an Alien fan right now, and we owe credit to this movie for bringing in new people and bringing Alien into the mainstream conversation.
It is a modern reboot,
yeah,
as well, which I think is where some of the stuff ties in. Some of the reuse thing. It just seems to be a crime that modern reboots tend to make, and I think it's because the filmmakers want to enjoy themselves. We sit there, we get a thrill when we're playing games, and we throw out quotes and bullshit like that, and this is them expressing their own joy in it. And I don't, Adam, it's something me and you talked about on the podcast, not the podcast, on the stream the other day. It was a fight we had in our own consulting of the anthologies. We were like, fans don't like this. We don't like this. And the editors were like, yeah, but can people writing the book enjoy doing this? And there's a balance. There's a fine balance.
There's a balance, yeah.
But I'm hoping Fede got it out his system, and if he does a new one, we move away from that.
Yeah. I would like to see Fede come back, though. Just like Dan, he's made a worthy Alien sequel. I'd love to see him do another one.
And Casper, just before we go, Covenant wasn't filmed in Pinewood, actually. That was filmed in Australia. And that's a fair point about the stage thing with Prometheus. But originally, Aliens, and Alien 3, a big part of their shooting over here was the incentives.
I need to ask this question because
Go
they
for it.
both come out recently. If we had to compare them, do we prefer Romulus or Prey? I would say Prey is the better film for me.
Yeah, I would say so as well. Prey for me is about a 9 out of 10.
Romulus for me.
I think Prey is a bit better, though the highs of Romulus are higher than the highs of Prey, but the lows and the nitpicks are greater than anything in Prey I had, so that's what kind of put it, but just a micro space down than Prey for me, but I like both of them.
I very much prefer Prometheus more, and I think that's a lot of the visual world building and visual continuity. I'm more interested in what's going off in Romulus and the world that I'm inhabiting in Romulus. I think they're both very competent films. Both have flaws in them, flaws that genuinely annoy me. You know, Ferrell's face, get away from her, you bitch. They are on the same level of this pisses me off as each other. But yeah, Romulus for me. Right.
So I'm so glad to see new directors with fresh takes and trying new things, trying to combine others. It's a good time. It's a good time to have these new
Indeed.
people here.
Indeed. We are going to skip the quiz for today because I think we've gone on long enough. But we'll revisit that in a later episode. We have a bunch of interviews in the pipeline to do with Romulus, including the director, some of the concept artists, some of the performers. I will work my hardest to get those into gear and going. But this is one of my favorite times of films. Is the aftermath, is the talking to the people, is learning the secrets. Because it's on us as fans now to do it. You know, the studios aren't going to give us Charles Delors Arica doing fucking kick-ass documentaries anymore. So it's on us to get this oral history in play. And it's some of the fun I have. So I'm really looking forward to that. Oh God, this one's going to be a nightmare to edit. This is going to take me ages. I'll have to really try and beast through this once it comes back from the first pass. But no, I'm excited. I'm thrilled. Thank you very much for all the Patreons who have joined us in the chat. If you're watching the video version, we've been throwing up quotes and comments from everybody over the course of the video. We have been reading some of them out on the audio one as well. So you are involved in both. We very much appreciate the support, and I very much appreciate the support knowing I'm going to be paying a fucking fortune for this one. But no, it's not a fortune. No. I'm going to be paying more than I've paid before for this edit. So thank you very much for the support there. It is fun getting to talk to everybody. And this year has been fun in terms of our community sort of involvement. You know, we have been a lot more consistent with our weekly streams. We've missed like 3 or 4, Adam. It's not many compared to how shit we were last year. And it's been fun, and I really do enjoy getting to learn more of you guys and girls out there who have been supporting us and joining in and sharing your own fandom with us. It's a good time. I still have 2 interviews and a podcast review in the bag. So we've got a lot of content coming. We've got a lot more content that's going to be being recorded, and we've got a lot of books and comics and RPGs coming out and games. And Adam needs to hopefully can have his interview done far before you.
That's going up tomorrow by the time of this interview.
Have you actually done the quote, the text bits?
Just about. I need to export again.
Okay, good. So that should be out by the time this is released. So go and check out YouTube. Go and check out the interview that Adam took part in with Rogue Incursion. And hopefully these rumors of Isolation 2 and Isolation remakes have also... no, they won't materialize by the time this is out. That's apparently not coming in until October time. But hopefully things will come of those, and we have our own celebrations in the planning stages as well for Isolation's 10th anniversary. So we are very fucking busy people, and we couldn't do it without the support, without the viewership, the audience that is you guys, because why would we fucking bother putting all this effort into things that aren't being enjoyed? So it's good to know and hear back from everybody that the shit we do is appreciated, and I love you all. Thank you very much.
Yeah, definitely. Your support is very much appreciated. Should we do the sign off, Aaron?
Yeah, do you want to throw out the L socials?
Yes. So you can find us on all the major social platforms: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Threads. We also have a website with message boards and information about the franchises, editorials, interviews, downloads, all sorts of good stuff. Aaron just put up a new, never before publicly released AvP first draft script that he spent too much money on. So be sure to check that out.
And too much time on transcribing.
Yes, I know the AvP 20th anniversary was kind of lost in all this Romulus excitement. So, but AvP fans like me are still trying to scrounge a bit of a celebration there. But yes, thank you again to all our listeners, supporters, viewers, and community members. It has been awesome to celebrate another Alien film release with you all. I know I'll be seeing it a few more times, and yeah, it just feels like it's a great time to be a fan. So I'm happy with what we've got here.
Well, thank you everybody for listening or watching. This has been Corporal Hicks.
RidgeTop.
Xenomorphine.
Still collating.
And there's something in the fucking water.
There's something in the water.
Water.
Until next time, folk.